Chapter 719. When Wei Zhongxian knocked on the door, Sun Lang's eyes sharpened. It only took a moment for him to break free from his sadness, sighing, and joy. He once again turned back into the meticulous Lord Marshal. The Lord Marshal judged the current situation in a split second. Now, he was alone in the room with open packages in front of him. Those were gifts from his girlfriends, as well as love letters written by them. Also, there was a fresh piece of women's underwear on his bed. This was the explosive point. If it was Xiaowei who knocked on the door and wanted to come in, and he happened to forget about the underwear and was seen by the little minx, then what happened next was very likely to develop in the direction of a romantic comedy, accompanied by some kind of misunderstanding, and then there might be benefits or something that he liked to see. But it wasn't Xiaowei who knocked on the door, but an old and dry eunuch. Then, if he saw that thing, it wouldn't be a very pleasant thing. No matter what, it was very uncomfortable to be stared at by this guy with a strange gaze. In a split second, the Lord Marshal, whose eyes were like torches, made a detailed consideration. The next moment, he waved his hand, and an invisible force shot out. The curtains of the bed were lowered, and then, with the fastest speed, the packages on the table were sorted out and sealed with sword energy. Very good. Sun Lang did it very skillfully. This was a skill that every boy who had experienced adolescence would master. The teacher's ward round, the parents knocking on the door, the boys had to use dexterity and a cautious attitude to guard their pure and flawless little secrets. After doing all this, Sun Lang walked to the door with light steps, unbolted the door, opened it, and said with a smile, "What are you doing here in the middle of the night? Don't you have a nightlife?" This was the kind of question that belonged to the kind of question that pointed at a monk and scolded a bald thief. Normally, Wei Zhongxian would laugh and fight back, but now, the old eunuch's expression was somewhat serious and subtle. He looked at Sun Lang with a solemn expression. Sun Lang's heart skipped a beat. Although he didn't know what had happened, looking at Wei Zhongxian's eyes, it didn't seem to be anything good. After all, this old man had been through hundreds of battles and had seen all kinds of storms and waves. He had long cultivated a deep shrewdness that did not show his emotions on his face. What kind of thing could make him reveal such an expression? Wei Zhongxian looked at Sun Lang and said slowly, "Master, it seems that young Master Dao is here." Sun Lang was stunned. So that was the case. Wei Zhongxian was very shrewd. He did not show his emotions on his face. He would only worry about his master's worries. That matter was actually a small matter, but to his master, it was a very big matter. Jia Sherdao was Sun Lang's cousin and a legitimate son of Ningbo Mansion. The Jia Mansion had two dukes. They were the Rongwa Mansion and the Ningbo Mansion. They were the two most prominent families in the family. They were both famous families with a long history in the empire. The Tianyuan War had lasted for decades. When the country was in danger, the nobles who had rested with the country and received the favor of the emperor naturally had to go to the battlefield without hesitation. The battlefield was the most dangerous place in the world. Death was the same. Lowly soldiers would die silently on the battlefield, and so would the noble. Therefore, among the high and mighty nobles who inherited their titles, some continued the glory of their ancestors and wrote their own legends on the battlefield, while others were defeated and died quietly. It should be known that war was the quickest way to reshuffle the cards. It could violently overthrow everything. It might take more than 10 generations of unremitting efforts to establish a noble family, but it only took a destructive conflict to make this magnificent building collapse with a loud bang. The Rongwa Mansion was facing such a situation. The cruel battlefield swallowed up the elite disciples of the main family, and even caused the momentarily illustrious Rongwa Mansion to face a difficult situation that was difficult to continue. As the backbone of the family, the second generation of the family members who were in the prime of their lives died one after another on the battlefield, and only the third generation of the family was left. Moreover, they were naughty and mischievous, and were completely useless. The situation of the Ningbo Mansion was much better than that of the Rongwa Mansion, but it was also limited. The third-generation legitimate son of the Ningbo Mansion was the same as the Rongwa Mansion. He was also naughty and mischievous. The once incomparably prominent Jia family seemed to have suffered the supercilious eye of God. Bad things happened one after another. The huge family business was in danger, and the magnificent building was on the verge of collapse. Now that things had come to this point, the decline of the Ronghua family was already doomed. The only thing they could do now was to protect their only son and hope that he would grow up quickly, marry a wife, and have many, many sons. They would spread the family's bloodline and lay the foundation for their future rise. This was the fate of the third generation's only son. But a terrible thing happened. The naughty and ignorant young man, like a devil, might have been stimulated by something or inspired by the heroic deeds of his father, or tired of the life of women, or for some other reason. He fled the family and claimed that he would go north to join the army and serve the country. Once he left, there was no news. The Ronghua mansion lost the last shuayin. This matter could not be concealed. It attracted many evil wolves to the Ronghua mansion. Fortunately, the grandmother of the Jia family, old Madame Shi, was not old. She took charge of the family and handled the situation well. But people with discerning eyes knew that the eldest son of the Ronghua mansion had no male offspring. There were only a group of widows and little girls left. They were like a piece of delicious meat. As long as they saw a flaw, they could take a bite. As for the missing son of the Jia family, he became a big joke in the aristocratic families. He became a negative example in educating the younger generation. His childish behavior ruined the glory of his ancestors, ruined the possibility of the family rising again, and made the once incomparably prominent family fall into the abyss. He was a stupid example of disloyalty and unfilial stupidity. There were even some busybodies who called him the most incompetent person in the world, the most unworthy person in history. He threw away his responsibility and willfully left the family, saying that he wanted to build a career. But he disappeared without a trace. Most likely, he died in that corner before he even reached the battlefield. Such a grievance was simply ridiculous. Fortunately, there was always a way out. When the noble families of Jinling City and the officials of the imperial court lamented that the once incomparable Jia family had finally stepped into the cycle of life and death, a name that made them extremely shocked came into their eyes. After disappearing for 3 years, that disloyal and unfilial incompetent son of the Ronghua mansion quietly appeared in the army of the Northern Theater of Operations. First, he was promoted to a general by winning the battle flag. Then, he led his subordinates to win one battle after another. His official position was getting higher and higher, and the number of soldiers and horses under his command was also increasing. Of course, his military exploits and achievements were also getting bigger and bigger. Every time he won a battle, his military exploits and achievements were incomparably dazzling. It made a lot of small tricks that came from the dark unable to be used. Not long after, he won a battle to his heart's content and made his name known. He jumped into the ranks of the famous generals and attracted the attention of the top commanders of the imperial army. Then it was out of control. He used a few years' time to shatter all doubts with his iron-forged military exploits and terrifying achievements. He completed a feat and achievement that others might not be able to do in their lifetime. He was only in his 20s, but he had already become the most dazzling new star in the 6 armies. He gathered a lot of like-minded comrades who admired him. People believed that he could even become a general that supported the nation before the age of 30. He could even enter the martial arts hall to establish a pavilion and become the youngest general and ruler of the empire. The contemptuous words of incompetent and unparalleled in the world had already disappeared without a trace. Since he had already established such a great achievement, then his actions back then were naturally a wise and decisive choice. Of course, the Ronghua mansion that was originally on the verge of collapse had once again recovered to its former glory. It was even better than before. Everyone knew that the incompetent son of the Jia family, who had outstanding military exploits, had saved the Jia family from falling into the abyss with his own strength. He had achieved the resurgence of the Jia family with his own strength and completed the path that other families couldn't complete for several generations. The Jia family welcomed its resurgence. Not only the Rongwa mansion, but also the Ningwa mansion. Because of the influence of the cousin of the Rongwa mansion, the devil incarnate in the Ningwa mansion also chose to go up north to join the army, and the Ningwa mansion didn't stop him. Although the incompetent son of the Ningwa mansion wasn't as dazzling as his brother, he had also established extraordinary achievements on the battlefield. The two brothers were of the same mind and had a tacit understanding with each other. They had two talents in one mansion, which was also a story in the army. In the future, they would inherit the title of duke and continue the legend of the Jia family having two dukes. Everyone thought so, but fate was unpredictable, and the future was always unpredictable. After the battle of the Great Desolate Mountain, the human race defeated the Sky Demon. The martial arts of the empire reached its peak. The whole country celebrated, and the people were happy. The souls of the heroes who died in the battle were solemnly mourned, and the living heroes were richly rewarded. However, Marshal Jia became a person who couldn't be mentioned. His cousin of the Ningwa mansion also died. It seemed that he was shocked by his cousin's death and became a Taoist priest. The Taoist priest's name was Jia Sherdao. Now, Marshal Jia, who was supposed to have died in the Great Desolate Mountain, had reappeared. After the two upheavals in Ming Province and Qin Province, this news was fermenting in the dark. Many well-informed people more or less knew about it. They speculated about the inside story of the Battle of the Great Desolate Mountain and wondered what the general of the Martial Arts Hall and Sword Pavilion, who had disappeared for 2 whole years, was going to do when he came back. Jia Sherdao, who had become a monk, seemed to have heard the news as well. He traveled day and night, and it was obvious what he was going to do. Wei Zhongxin looked at the silent Sun Lang and waited for a while. Then he said softly, "He is outside the Bai Castle right now. He said he wants to see Second Master Bao." "Master, do you want to see him?" Sun Lang sighed softly. Memories of the past came to his mind. Just as Yin Luo said, they were part of his life. They wouldn't be forgotten or erased. They were his life. He had to face them sooner or later. Sun Lang said, "Of course I want to see him. Why not? I haven't seen him for 2 years. I want to take a good look at my stupid Odu." Chapter 720. Time slowly flowed back to a few years ago. At that time, the Empire was still at war, and the soldiers had sacrificed their lives on the battlefield. Decades of war were enough to turn any country that had not yet perished into a state of total war. The administrative efficiency of the country had been unprecedentedly improved, and all kinds of war-related technologies and theories had made explosive progress. The national consciousness had also gradually awakened in the crisis. The entire country had turned into a huge machine. Everything was for war and victory. Logistical support, military operations, resource allocation, public opinion. Everything was filled with strong fuel for this huge war machine. In such an environment, being a soldier became the most ideal profession and the most admired group. Young people were proud of joining the army and fighting on the battlefield. Sacrificing one's life for the country had become the highest tragic aesthetics. Magnificent and heroic frontier poems had become the mainstream of the literary world. The martial spirit of the Hudo Empire had reached its peak. Whether they were from a prestigious family or from a humble background, ambitious young people would travel thousands of miles to the battlefield. In such a big environment, a young man from the Ningwa mansion came to the north. That was the first time Sun Lang met his cousin. "Greetings, Bao Tang Xiao. Many years ago, you ran away from home, and the entire Jinling was turned upside down. You disappeared without a trace, but I suffered an unexpected disaster. Because they were afraid that I would imitate you, my family gave me the strictest order. My clothes, food, housing, and transportation were all closely monitored. I was like a bird in a cage, a turtle in a jar. Even the air I breathed seemed to be tight, and it was like this for several years. At that time, I hated you very much. I don't know how many times I scolded you in my mind, but I also felt a little pity for you. Because what happened to me at that time, I was afraid that you were also tired of it, so you ran away. But now, because of your success, you have won a lot of glory for our ancestors and let the Jia family hold their heads high. I also benefited from it. I was able to go to the north to join the army because of your example. If my father didn't want the Rongwa mansion to be stronger than the Ningwa mansion, he had to let me show my face and give him face. So I was finally free, and it was all thanks to you. Therefore, Cousin Bao, we're even now. We don't owe each other anything. The first time they met, he was polite and distant. This cousin from a Ningwa mansion was prouder than he had imagined. Although he was courteous and gave enough respect to his cousin, he did not flatter him in the slightest. This young man did not want to rely on his elder brother's protection. He wanted to do something great on his own. This kind of attitude was exactly what Sun Lang wished for. Because he was an imposter, he knew nothing about the affairs of the Jia mansion. If this younger cousin intimately approached him to reminisce about the old days, he reckoned that it wouldn't be long before he would be exposed. Therefore, in their first meeting, the two of them treated each other with respect. However, in their conversation, which was as flat as water, they maintained an appropriate distance. But this estrangement did not last long. The battlefield was a cruel place, but also a miraculous place. Here, perhaps after only one battle, two people who had never met before would establish a deep friendship that was hard to come by. Death was a frequent visitor here, and so was trust. On the bitter battlefield, you could only believe in your comrade in arms and fellow soldiers. You could only believe in humans who were like you, because only by fighting side by side could you have the possibility of victory. Therefore, Sun Lang was able to win the hearts of so many people in just a few short years, obtain the followers of so many talented people, and successfully establish his own team. It must be known that in peacetime, to achieve this kind of popularity and gather so many talented people, it would take decades of effort. However, war was a special machine. It used blood and death as fuel to accelerate time and accelerate everything. An ordinary person could become a world-renowned hero overnight, while a famous general with great power could be turned into dust in the blink of an eye. Sun Lang, on the other hand, had survived. He had accumulated everything through his continuous victories. War was like this. As long as you could win, as long as you could obtain victory, then you would be able to obtain everything. Because the army only recognized meritorious deeds, and soldiers only admired the strong. And as a strong person, if you could show some unique personality and charm, then more and more people would see you as a wise leader and be loyal to you. Therefore, the estrangement between Sun Lang and Jia Sherdao didn't last long, because at that time, Sun Lang was indeed as dazzling as the sun. He was generous, gentle, compassionate, and approachable. He was even willing to run into danger for a comrade he did not know. Such a person was usually said to be a good person and would even be called an idiot. But if coupled with the fact that he was victorious in every battle and had a terrifying record of bravery, then in the extreme environment of the battlefield where life and death hung by a thread, such a person was a living legend. As long as people saw that heroic figure shining on the battlefield, they would be convinced. The battlefield was a place where heroes were needed and always would be. Jia Sherdao was naturally one of the people who was convinced because he was very young. He was hot-blooded, impulsive, and passionate. He admired heroes, was not shrewd, and still believed in his ideals. On the other hand, Sun Lang had a whole new level of respect for him. That proud and calm young man had shown his talent and bravery in the war. The defense of Yi County, the defense line of Huaiyun, the attack and defense of Wuha, and even the world-shocking breakout of Huang County. He led 700 cavalrymen to break out of the enemy's encirclement. When the news spread, the morale of the Benjo theater of operations was greatly boosted. These achievements made him famous, and the world noticed this young man who had been hiding under the halo of his cousin. His name was Jia Sherdao. Therefore, Jia Sherdao finally gained the qualifications and confidence to look at his cousin as an equal with his own efforts. Sun Lang also slowly let go of the estrangement and indifference in his heart. The battlefield was such a pure place. The estrangement and prejudice were actually very easy to eliminate. They first became good friends, and then they were like a pair of real cousins. Brotherly love and respect were no longer empty words of estrangement and indifference. Jia Sherdao was transferred back to Sun Lang and became his capable assistant and think tank. Their private relationship became better and better. What Sun Lang was worried about did not happen. When the two young people got together, they talked about their ideals and women. They did not talk about the trivial things in the family all day long. Jia Sherdao confided his ambition. He wanted to be a general, enter the martial arts hall, and set up a pavilion to become the prime minister of the empire. He said that there were still many imperfections in the country and that bold reforms were needed. He once told his cousin about his long-planned political policy, as if he was presenting a treasure. But of course, he was mercilessly mocked and attacked. After all, Sun Lang came from another world, and it was an era where information was extremely developed. In that era, knowledge had become cheaper than ever before. Thousands of years of accumulation had led to explosive progress in technology and thought. History had become transparent. Countless scholars and thinkers had traveled through time to explain the essence of change and summarize the lessons of history. The huge history of the development of civilization listed too many examples and experiences. This was a precious wealth. For an ordinary person on Earth, this fragmented knowledge was just a leisure time and bragging capital. Basically, it would not be used in a lifetime. However, if that Earthling had a miraculous encounter, and not only had he come to an alternate world, but he had also obtained great power and an extremely high status for a few years due to special reasons. Then, after combining the knowledge from his previous life with his current vision, he would gain experience and insight that surpassed the era. Therefore, Jia Sherdao's naive reform policy was mercilessly mocked by Sun Lang. His ridicule was so reasonable that Jia Sherdao was speechless. The stupid O'Dowda was not convinced. He asked his cousin if there was any good way to solve the problem. The wise Sun Lang just smiled and did not say anything. There was only one way to solve the problem fundamentally, and that was to King revolution. Unfortunately, it was too shocking and would scare his little brother. However, O'Dowdu clearly misunderstood Oni-Chan's smile. Or perhaps it could be said that his worship and respect towards his elder brother made him feel that his elder brother was the one who could change the empire. Thus, under the moonlight, he made a promise to his elder brother that he would assist his elder brother and make this country better in the future. Unfortunately, their ambitions, promises, and hot-bloodedness had all been blown away by the wind and rain. All that was left was a cold heart. To most people, the Battle of the Great Desolate Mountain was an unprecedented victory. It was an epic that brought peace to the world. However, to a small number of people, this victory was like a thunderclap. Jia Sherdao, who also survived, refused the imperial court's reward. He was a smart person, and he could see things clearly, so he was powerless. His own family, the Ronwa manor that had lost his cousin, there were too many things that tied him down, making him unable to do anything. So, his hot blood was cooled by the heavy darkness. He, who used to be high-spirited and hot-blooded, uncharacteristically left a poem that said, "Life must be drunk when there is wine. How sad are the children and grandchildren of Qingzhou." He even became a Taoist priest. No one knew the struggle in his heart. No one knew the sadness in his heart. Maybe it was because his brother was too dazzling, or maybe it was because the war covered most of the darkness. But at the end of the war, this young man who used to have dreams finally saw the cruel things. And the death of his brother shattered everything he once believed and held on to. But now, after 2 years, he came all the way to Qingzhou because he heard a shocking piece of news. When his father stepped into his mountain again and threw the secret report in his face, Jia Sherdao was stunned. Now, he came all the way to the Bai Castle. He was waiting for an answer, waiting for the truth. When Wei Zhongxin showed up and asked him to go to a place, he knew that he had waited for it. Eunuch Wei led Jia Sherdao to a house, opened the door, and invited him in. Jia Sherdao didn't look at the old eunuch from the beginning to the end. He didn't even look at him now, because he saw a man. Although the man's back was facing him, his hair was very strange, and his clothes were barbarian style. He couldn't be wrong. He couldn't be wrong. The man turned around and looked at him, his face expressionless. "You're here," he said. Jia Dao didn't say anything. He rushed up and waved his fist. Chapter 721. This punch was vigorous and powerful, and it contained too many things. It was in line with Jia Dao's current state of mind. His brother, who had been dead for 2 years, was still alive. Most importantly, he hadn't said a word in the past 2 years, not even saying hello. So he found out about it through his father's channels. That wasn't the most annoying thing. The most infuriating thing was that even Wei Zhongxian, the old eunuch, knew about it and had already returned to his elder brother's side, while he, the younger brother, was still kept in the dark. If it wasn't for his father coming to find him, he didn't know when he would have known about it. Why? Confusion, anger, excitement, sadness, doubt, shock. All these emotions gathered in this punch and hit the strange, yet familiar face in front of him. Sun Lang felt that the scene in front of him was familiar. It could often be seen in movies and anime, especially in Japanese anime. The characters or male protagonists who looked very arrogant would, for various reasons, forcefully take the opponent's fist with their face. They would either be knocked to the ground or sent flying, and then everyone would start talking about their dark history. But Sun Lang didn't plan to do that at all. With a bang, the fist was squeezed by the palm. Sun Lang caught the punch casually. His 5 fingers squeezed Jia Dao's fist and looked at the angry face. It was a little different from the high-spirited face in his memory. There was more indifference and vicissitudes. It lacked the sharpness of a young man. The lofty horns of the past had been smoothed out a lot. He was still wearing a Taoist robe, and his hair was combed into a Taoist bun. He looked like a young Taoist in plain clothes, not the high-spirited young duke of Ningbo Mansion. He became a monk. It was said that his father was so angry that he hung his seal and left. He refused the imperial court's reward and gave up his bright future. He lived in seclusion deep in the mountains and forests alone. He seemed to have lost confidence in the world and compromised his ideals. But Sun Lang could feel the black fire burning in his cousin's heart. The fire was twisted and angry, gathering hatred and malice, silently dormant. He looked at the young Taoist in front of him and smiled. "I heard that you became a Taoist, but your martial arts didn't seem to fall behind. Could it be that you're hiding in the mountains and plotting something?" Jia Dao's words seemed to be squeezed out from between his teeth. He said coldly, "I heard that you were dead, but you're still alive in this world. What are you planning?" Sun Lang said calmly, "You're right. The old me is indeed dead." Upon hearing this, Jia Dao exploded. Like a furious lion, he roared at Sun Lang, "So you've forgotten about your ancestors and family. You've allowed the widows of the Rongwa Mansion to support the family for the past 2 years, and you've allowed Sister Shui and Sister Lin to stay alone and mourn for you. You've allowed Madame Dowager to wash her face with tears all day long, and the women of the Rongwa Mansion to pretend to be happy all day long, and you've allowed the bastards of the Collateral Branch and the rats of Jinling to covet the Jiao Mansion. You've ignored all of this and treated it as if you were already dead?" Sun Lang narrowed his eyes and nodded. "Yes, he died a long time ago." "Bastard." Upon hearing this cold-blooded and ruthless answer, the travel-worn young man was completely furious. He slammed into Sun Lang with a ferocious face, as if he wanted to bite off a piece of meat from Sun Lang directly. Sun Lang sneered faintly, opened his right hand, and pushed casually. Even back then, he was famous for his bravery in the 6 armies. During the Grandmaster Martial Arts competition, he was recommended as the best swordsman in the world. He had also compiled the book Sword Scripture and had already become a great Grandmaster. In contrast, his cousin, Jia Dao, was not known for his martial arts. He was better at battle formations and defense. Even though Jia Dao had worked hard in the past 2 years, the gap between him and Sun Lang was even bigger. It was as if the gap between heaven and earth. The bloody battle in the Barren Mountain was like the hottest furnace, using unprecedented fuel and hammer to forge Sun Lang into the most terrifying monster in the history of the world. In terms of martial arts strength, the two of them were already in different dimensions. And Sun Lang did not have any guilt or hesitation. So Jia Sherdao had no chance at all. His desperate attack was full of mistakes. With just a gentle push from Sun Lang, he flew out and fell to the ground. Jia Sherdao rolled on the ground and quickly stood up. He roared and rushed up without hesitation. Sun Lang stretched out his leg and tripped him. Jia Sherdao saw it clearly, but he could not dodge. He used all his strength, but he was almost tripped and fell to the ground. "Stupid," Sun Lang said. "I didn't even use my strength, and you fell." These words were very familiar. In the past, when they were training with each other, he would often say, "No," rather than calling it training. It would be better to say that it was one-sided bullying. However, it was given a proper name. He would say things like, "Give your stupid and weak younger brother special training on the battlefield. Let him familiarize himself with any unexpected situations and improve his survival ability on the battlefield. This is the elder brother's care for his younger brother," and so on. This kind of love education usually happened when he did something wrong or said something wrong to annoy his cousin. This famous and prestigious elder brother was not always perfect. He was sometimes very narrow-minded and vengeful in private, and he would always use subtle ways to get revenge. Every time, he would be tortured until his face was bruised and swollen, rolling on the ground. Every time this happened, his elder brother would wear that hateful smile and make sarcastic remarks. "I didn't even use my strength, and you fell" was the most frequent, and a string of sarcastic remarks such as, "Your lower body is weak," and "Your boxing skills are not good enough," was the second most frequent. Without a doubt, his elder brother was a noisy guy who could not stop talking. He would always say something strange. Strangely, he had heard a lot about his cousin, but he had never heard that he had such a bad habit. It was probably a bad habit that he later picked up on the battlefield, or so he thought at the time. Therefore, whenever he heard the sarcastic remarks such as, "I didn't even use my strength," and "You fell," he would usually smile lazily and pretend to be lying down. When his elder brother did not hesitate to kick him in the groin, he would jump up as fast as he could. It was always like this in the past, but not anymore. Now, when he heard such words, he only felt infinite irony and sadness. The words were still the same, and the person was still the same back then. It was just that he was betrayed. Jia Sherdao jumped up with all his might, but it was useless. He screamed and rushed to the person in front of him. "That's enough." Sun Lang's tone was still lazy. He blocked Jia Sherdao's claw attack and knocked him to the ground with his left shoulder. Looking at the young man on the ground, he said lightly, "I have something to ask you." Jia Sherdao said fiercely, "You have something to ask me? Then what have you been doing?" Sun Lang said lightly, "Cut the crap. I ask you answer. Who told you that I'm here?" Jia Sherdao stared at him coldly. "Is that important? Are you so afraid of letting us know?" Sun Lang said, "It's important, but I'm not afraid. It's important because I'm fighting with the Emperor in Tensei Province. Now that I'm in the Bai Castle, I've successfully dealt with Bai Yue's matter, and I have the final right to explain this matter. I've once again taken the initiative in the game with the Emperor. If the Emperor and Tensei Province want to turn the situation around, they have to think of a good idea somewhere else. The Jia Mansion is a good breakthrough point." Now that the rumor had been spread, it was slowly fermenting. After the two generals, Zhao Yunlong and Qi Guanyin, added fuel to the fire, this matter had caused quite a stir in the court. The Bai family, who had personally experienced this matter, had yet to say anything, and the Bai family was controlled by Sun Lang. He had the gold elemental sacred sword and was a prestigious former marshal. Plus, there were many witnesses at the time, so of course, he had the final right to explain this matter. If he told the whole truth and pointed out that Bai Yue had been swallowed by the gold elemental sword spirit and claimed that all of the imperial army had suffered the same fate, then the emperor's situation would become extremely passive. This meant that after the negotiations in Ming province had been put on hold, the emperor was once again forced to the negotiating table by Sun Lang. From the very beginning, Sun Lang had the ability and trump card to flip the table, but he chose to negotiate with the imperial court. This could only mean that he wanted more. During the negotiations in Ming province, his demands were not met, so the negotiations were put on hold. He brought empress with him to Qin province, and who would have thought that he would perfectly deal with by Yue's matter and obtain another heavyweight chip? One could imagine that if the negotiations were to begin again, his face would become extremely arrogant, and his appetite would swell to an extreme. This was extremely infuriating. Moreover, for the emperor, the situation had always been extremely passive. Dynasties changed, and the throne changed. In the thousands of years of history, politics and conspiracies were intertwined. However, in all the history books, there had never been a situation like today where one person was able to have the upper hand against an entire country. This was because the situation was too unique. This person's martial arts had infinitely narrowed the gap between the strength of one person and an entire country. This was because he could easily shake off the pursuit of an army, travel thousands of miles, and calmly kill all of the country's grassroots officials, completely paralyzing the administrative system of the world's most powerful country. Not only that, but he also possessed a terrifying secret that could consign an entire country to eternal damnation. Moreover, he was not afraid to shed all pretense of cordiality because he had become a madman. Therefore, even though the emperor had many tricks and schemes, he did not dare to use them. As the saying went, a man with nothing to lose is not afraid of wearing shoes. Before the empire came up with a way to counterbalance and defeat him, they had to be careful. First, they had to deal with the matter of Bai Castle. Just as Sun Lang had said, the Jia Mansion was indeed a good breakthrough point. After explaining, Sun Lang repeated, "So, let me ask you, how do you know about this?" Chapter 722. Even if he tried to explain patiently, Jia Shidao just sneered. Sun Lang's voice turned cold. "If you're here to be a mute, get out of here as soon as possible." Jia Shidao looked at Sun Lang and gritted his teeth. "I'm here to see my brother. I want to see if he's still alive. I want to see if he's doing well. I want to ask him why we haven't heard from him in the past 2 years. I want to take him home. But now, tell me, what should I say?" Sun Lang said, "You should answer my question. Answer me. Where did you get your information from?" The young High Duke roared, "Is that your only problem? The Jia Mansion is a good breakthrough point. Is it your only thought about your family? Is the Ronghua Mansion just a stumbling block on your way to revenge? Do you know how much they miss you?" Sun Lang said slowly, "They don't miss me." Jia Shidao was stunned. Obviously, he had misunderstood Sun Lang. He looked at his cousin with sadness and anger in his eyes. He smiled sadly. "Yes, you said that you're already dead, so you don't plan to go back anymore, right? Is revenge the only thing you want now?" Sun Lang looked down at him and said coldly, "Is there anything else I can do now?" Jia Shidao stared back at him without showing any weakness. "You should have gone home a long time ago. At least let the old lady know you're not dead. At least let the 2 sisters-in-law know you're not dead. At least let everyone who's struggling know you're not dead. The Ronghua Mansion has such a big family business, but there's not a single man in the house. Do you know how hard they've been for the past 2 years? Do you know how they've survived the past 2 years?" Sun Lang sneered. "Go back. Then what? Hide your identity and be a filial son? Watching that old dog in the imperial capital happily become his emperor for all eternity? Then when he comes back to his senses, he'll let me and the whole Ronghua Mansion fall into chaos like before. Is the earth really clean?" Jia Shidao just looked at Sun Lang. The disappointment and sadness on his face became more obvious. "Who said that?" He said, "You're doubting us. You don't believe us. You're alienating us." This was probably the source of Jia Shidao's anger and fear. "You want revenge. I know what you've done in the past few months, whether it's in Ming province or Qin province." His voice was slightly hoarse from the intense roaring from before. "Hu Shouxin, Zhao Yunlong, and even Qi Guanyin, whom you have never met before, as well as Bai Yue, Wang Wuan, Wei Zhongxian here in Qin province. These are all fellow soldiers in the army who have entrusted their lives to you on the battlefield. You trust them, but you don't trust us. They knew everything. You summoned them under your command. You trusted them, just as they trusted you. Even if it was for revenge, even if it was to seek justice from the imperial court, They joined you without hesitation because they trusted you, and you trusted them. Jia Sherdao looked at Sun Lang and said calmly, "But you don't trust us. They are your life and death comrades, brothers who treat each other with absolute sincerity. However, I'm a younger cousin. The same blood flows in our veins, and we have the same ancestor. Yet, you don't trust me. When you need manpower, you would rather gather Wei Zhongxian and the others than consider me. Sister Shui and Sister Lin are the granddaughter-in-law candidates of the Dowager Duchess. You're not engaged, but they've been deeply in love with you for a long time. When the news of your death came back, they didn't hesitate to choose to observe mourning for you. They're so infatuated that even a heart of stone can soften, but you don't trust them. And the Ronghua Mansion and the Dowager Duchess, your grandmother, spoiled you to the bone. You're her favorite grandson. She gave you everything she could give you, but you hurt her twice in a row. The first time, you ran away from home, and there was no news of you for 3 years. She lost her only grandson for 3 whole years. Do you know how she got through it? When the news of you standing out in the army came, do you know how happy she was? She's not happy because you're successful, but because you're still alive in this world. You've won battle after battle, achieved success and fame, and even brought glory to your family and revitalized your family. But what she's most worried about is that you'll have an accident on the battlefield. She was right to be worried. 2 years ago, you made her suffer the same pain. Jia Sherdao's tone gradually became cold, or rather, there was no fluctuation, as if he was talking about something that had nothing to do with him. But you didn't die, and you never showed up. You never planned to go home. Don't you know that there are people at home who are worried about you and cry for you all day long? He looked at Sun Lang and said softly and sadly, "Is your heart made of iron?" Sun Lang just looked at him without saying a word. His eyes flickered intensely. Jia Sherdao looked at him, and his smile became sadder and sadder. "What, did I hit a sore spot? I just want to know why you don't trust us. Do you want to say something? You don't want to implicate the family? How do you know what we think? How do you know we won't help you? You're the only man left in the Ronghua Mansion, and the Emperor didn't hesitate to kill you. Do you think the old madam will still be blindly loyal after knowing the truth? We're your real family. You're a descendant of the Jia Mansion. You're enough." Sun Lang interrupted Jia Sherdao's dreamlike question. He repeated, "Enough." Jia Sherdao looked at his strange cousin, and his eyes gradually became clear. But then they returned with confusion and anger. He smiled sarcastically. "What, do you still feel guilty? I thought your heart had turned into iron, and you wouldn't feel this way." Sun Lang took a deep breath. "Since you're full of resentment, then leave. I've already met Lin Daiyu and Shui Baochai and Mingzhou. I'll deal with the Ronghua Mansion separately." Jia Sherdao was irritated by his indifferent attitude again. He said harshly, "You might as well be dead. Are you going to return to the Jia Mansion with such a cold face? Deal with it separately? When? Until you and the imperial court have a life and death battle? How long will that take? Since I already know this news, the Ronghua Mansion can't be hidden for long. Old Madam is already so old. Do you want her to listen to all the rumors and be alarmed and come to the imperial capital to look for you?" Sun Lang said coldly, "Shut up. What? Did I say anything wrong?" Jia Sherdao was furious. His eyes were as sharp as knives. "You might as well not go back. Since you're already dead, then die completely. The Ronghua Mansion will pretend that you're not an unfilial descendant, and your parents who died early will pretend that they never had a son like you." As soon as Jia Sherdao finished speaking, a bone-chilling coldness hit him in the face. It was a murderous aura, an unprecedented murderous aura. The elder brother that he had once revered and admired incomparably, the elder brother that he had once shared a tacit understanding with, had released an unprecedented and terrifying killing intent towards him. His cousin actually wanted to kill him. Jia Sherdao was stunned at first, and then he laughed wildly. Tears and laughter coexisted. He was shocked and sad. He looked at Sun Lang. "You're really not who you used to be. You want to kill me. Then kill me. Do it." His throat tightened. Sun Lang grabbed him by the neck and lifted him up. Sun Lang only needed to pinch Jia Sherdao's throat gently, and Jia Shidao's throat would break immediately. However, this extremely sad young man was not afraid at all. He looked at Sun Lang fearlessly, his eyes angry and sad. No matter what happened, he was ready to meet his fate. But the person in front of him didn't do it. Jia Shidao found that his cousin's expression was very strange. Anger and suppressed sadness. Sun Lang looked at Jia Shidao and said, "My father and mother are not dead." This surprised Jia Shidao. He was surprised and then felt that it was ridiculous. What? What did you say? Ronghua Mansion's uncle, his cousin's father, had died for the country in the Tianyuan War. His cousin's mother, Mrs. Wang, had been weak and sick since she was young because of grief, so she died with her husband. This was something that everyone knew. It was common sense. However, the words that came out of his cousin's mouth went against common sense and was extremely unreasonable. Suddenly, Jia Shidao felt a bone-chilling coldness. Chapter 723. He couldn't understand. He couldn't understand at all. They were words that he could understand, but when they were put together, he didn't know what they meant. He didn't know if he really didn't understand, or if he was forcing himself not to understand, because he was afraid, extremely afraid. He had never heard of the Han people. He had no idea where the Gregorian era came from. As for the People's Republic of China, he had never heard of such a country. Whether it was the name of the clan, the calendar, or the country, he had never heard of them. In the memories in his mind, in all the history books he had read, in all the ancient books and records, in the engravings and traces of history, these things had never appeared. What was that? What was going on? How could he say something like that? For a moment, Jia Shidao felt that this was his cousin's crazy ravings, but he knew that it wasn't because his brother's expression wasn't fake. There was a faint nostalgia, a faint sadness, and that was the loneliness that had been worn away by time. What was going on? His usual quick thinking seemed to be frozen, and he couldn't even speak a complete sentence. And Sun Lang's narration continued. His expression was soft and full of reminiscence. My hometown is very, very far away, so far that I don't know how to define it. In a universe I know, there's a vast spiral galaxy called the Milky Way. At the edge of the Milky Way, there's a small, inconspicuous planetary system. Our civilization named it the solar system. The third planet around the sun is called Earth. It is neither close nor far from the sun, so it is surrounded by warm water and atmosphere. Life thrives in it. Then, human beings transcended the definition of animals and became the rulers of this biosphere, so there was civilization. Jia Shidao's teeth were chattering. The more detailed and realistic Sun Lang spoke, the more scared he was. Earth is very big, and life sprouts everywhere. Different locations and dimensions lead to different cultures and civilizations. This is very similar to this world. And my country used to be very similar to the Hodu Empire. From the slash-and-burn era of the ancient Yanhuang, there were the 3 sovereigns and 5 emperors, the 3 dynasties of Xia, Shang, and Zhou, and even the spring and autumn period, the Warring States period. The Qin dynasty swept the 6 countries and unified them, establishing a true imperial system. After that, the dynasties changed, and the civilization was once glorious and dazzling, illuminating the world, but it also fell into darkness, sinking the divine prefecture. For 5,000 years, it was just a dark and cruel history book. Sun Lang smiled. Fortunately, I was born in a brand new era. The monarchy has disappeared, the famine has left, and the common people have the most basic dignity. According to the standards of the ancient times, it is simply the era of saints. Even if there are still many problems, it is still much better than the ancient times. Jia Shidao looked at Sun Lang in shock. His heart was in chaos at the moment. Sun Lang continued. As for me, I am just an ordinary person, a civilian. My father is very ordinary, and my mother is very different. My grandfather and grandpa were farmers who threw food from the field. In the empire, they're the lowest level of the soil. They work for the landlords, are exploited by the officials, and obey the unreasonable rule of the government. They have to kneel down at the slightest thing and can't keep their dignity in life. My ancestors lived like this, and my grandfather and grandpa should have lived like this too. But at that time, a man appeared and did something that no one had done for thousands of years. He did something that even saints couldn't do. He gave the common people who had been kneeling for thousands of years the dignity to stand up. Sun Lang smiled. His smile was very calm and warm. His words were a bit long-winded, but this was what he wanted to say. There were many things he wanted to say. He said so, although I am an ordinary person with an ordinary family background and an ordinary life, I can still live a carefree life in that very good country. There is no hunger or war. As long as I work, I can feed myself. As long as I work harder, I can live a better life. Although the gap between the rich and the poor is still very big, the poor have their own ways of living. There are phones, computers, games, movies, and more in the future because the world is still getting better and technology is constantly improving. I think that kind of life is already very good. My parents are still young, and the era is very good. The future is worth looking forward to. Maybe in just 20 years, the world will be completely different. Because in the past 20 years, the world has changed dramatically. I look forward to the future and live a comfortable life. Although my country has many problems, it won't let artillery fall on my territory. It won't let me starve, and it won't let me have no place to live. Well, at least I can rent a place to live. He spread his hands and smiled helplessly. Even if I don't know martial arts, it doesn't matter because in my world, there is basically no martial arts. The most powerful warrior can't even beat a captain. So, do you understand? In that world, in my country, there will be no wars, and there will be no extraterrestrial devils. Although I was born in an ordinary family and did not know any martial arts, I can still live a comfortable and fulfilling life. I have my own life, a future that I can look forward to, and a family that I love. He looked at Jia Sherdao and was still smiling. Then, I came here. Jia Sherdao took 2 steps back and looked at the person in front of him. He didn't know what to say. He didn't know if he was dreaming, and he didn't know if his cousin had gone crazy. His elder brother was talking about extremely ridiculous things that he had never heard of before with a matter-of-fact look on his face. Sun Lang smiled and smiled. He smiled and asked, "Do you know how I came here?" Jia Sherdao shook his head subconsciously, and a panicked expression appeared on his face. "You? Don't say. Don't be like this, you. But Sun Lang wouldn't stop. It was very, very ordinary. I wasn't struck by lightning. I didn't enter the time tunnel by mistake. I didn't make a wish or anything. I was just walking on the street, very ordinary. I wanted to buy something very ordinary. After buying something very ordinary, I wanted to eat with Mom and Dad, and then he spread his hands as if this was just a regrettable mistake. And then it was here." He was still smiling. Sun Lang was still smiling. He seemed to be telling a story that had nothing to do with him. He patted Jia Sherdao's shoulder and said gently, "You can understand, right? You were living well, but suddenly you came to another world and couldn't go back. You suddenly disappeared from your world, and your parents are still waiting for you to come home for dinner. You can understand this feeling, right? Huh? You can understand, right?" Jia Sherdao felt as if his body had rusted. How he wished that this was a ridiculous dream. How he wished that he could wake up immediately. Because he knew that if what the person in front of him said was all true, then he would tell the most important part of the story. That was why this person who claimed to be from another world became his cousin. And then, after I woke up, I saw a dead person. I live in a peaceful world that you can't imagine. Other than photos and videos, I haven't even seen a dead person with my own eyes. And then I saw it. But that's not the scariest thing. The scariest thing is, Sun Lang's voice became very erratic, and there was even a trace of trembling, as if the scene at that time was still in front of his eyes. He slowly said, "That dead person looked exactly like me." The emotions that Jia Sherdao had been suppressing burst out. He was on the verge of breaking down. He wanted to step back and shout, but Sun Lang pressed his shoulder so that he couldn't. But Jia Sherdao was still struggling violently. He said hurriedly, "This isn't real. cousin. This is your hallucination. You always like to think about these strange things. You must have suffered a lot in the past 2 years to have such hallucinations. But it's okay. Let's go home. Let's go home. You'll definitely return to normal. You'll definitely remember. Sun Lang smiled and said, "Don't deceive yourself and others. You know in your heart that what I said is true. None of this is an illusion. It's impossible to have such a realistic illusion." If I can deduce in detail in my mind the incomparably complicated development history of thousands of years of technology and culture of another human civilization that is completely different from this world, then the throne won't be in the hands of that old dog. Jia Dao shook his head violently. He stared at Sun Lang and said, "This is impossible. This must be a hallucination. You are my cousin. You are. This is definitely you. It can't be fake. You are the person in my memory. How can it be fake? How can it be wrong?" Sun Lang said indifferently. "I came to this world 8 years ago, 3 years after your cousin ran away from home. The so-called Marshal Jia's illustrious military exploits and his 6 years of legendary experience as the commander were all created by me. As for your real cousin, he had already died 8 years ago. The reason why he disappeared for 3 years was that he participated in a top-secret plan of the Empire. The purpose of this plan was to choose a special master of the Holy Sword. Your cousin was very powerful. He stood out from many candidates and lived to the end. Unfortunately, he failed. The moment he held the Holy Sword, all his vitality was destroyed by the sword chi of the Holy Sword. His death was a small matter, but it meant the failure of this top-secret plan. The leader of the plan was very unwilling, so he set up the formation of Crush Star in an attempt to reverse life and death and save your cousin. But the formation failed. Not only did it fail, but it also brought me to this world. So when I woke up, I saw a dead person who looked exactly like me. And a sword." Sun Lang's smile was warm and warm. "What do you think happened next?" Chapter 724. Jia Dao was in a dilemma. Before he came, he had imagined many situations and thought that he had considered everything. He had considered all of his cousin's reactions and performance in advance and made a corresponding plan one by one. This technique was taught to him by his cousin. It was called thinking in another's shoes. He thought it was foolproof, but in the end, man proposes, God disposes. He never thought that he would get such a cruel truth. The cousin in front of him, whom he had admired for 6 years and missed for 2 years, was not his cousin at all. He even had a bizarre experience that he could not imagine. He said that he was someone from another world, a country that he had never heard of, a calendar that he had never heard of, a world that he had never heard of. It was not the other side of the endless sea, but a further distance that he could never imagine. Those words were the most crazy words, like a heavenly book that he could not understand at all. But Jia Dao had to believe it. The other party's story was linked and perfect. Even the smartest person could not make up such a bizarre and true lie, because no one could make up the thickness of an entire civilization out of thin air. And Sun Lang's story was still going on. Since they wanted to listen, the audience couldn't leave before he finished speaking. His tone was terrifyingly calm, making Jia Dao feel waves of fear and palpitations. That was the beginning of his pain, the anchor point of his destiny, and a memory that he could never forget. The plan to reverse life and death failed. I think that the array they set up probably had the most basic intelligence. After realizing that they could not resurrect your brother, they thought of other ways to solve the problem. Since they could not resurrect this person, they found someone who looked exactly like him. This power tore through time and space by accident, brought me to this world, and completely changed my fate. He said lightly, "The plan failed, and the selected sword master still died, but the array summoned another person who looked exactly like the dead sword master. If you were the person in charge of the plan, what would you do after seeing this scene? You would probably make a Hail Mary effort, right?" They thought so too. So, with the attitude that there was no harm in trying, they forced me to pick up the sword stuck in the ground. They told me to pick it up. But a second ago, I was still living in my own world without any worries. I was walking on the street, wanted to buy something normally, and then go home normally. I wanted to eat with my parents normally, just like usual. Then, in the blink of an eye, I came to an unfamiliar place. The people around me were wearing ancient clothes. There was a dead person in front of me, and there was a sword. Their eyes were fanatical and fierce, like anxious dogs jumping over the wall, like drowning people grasping at the last straw. They had completely lost their minds. At that time, I was just a weak, ordinary person. I was just an ordinary person who lived in a comfortable environment. Faced with a group of people who were high up and full of killing intent, cowardice dominated my heart. I had no choice but to pray in my heart. I prayed that this was a prank. But that's not it. The moment I grabbed that sword, I understood that this wasn't a prank. This is a nightmare. He looked at Jia Sherdao seriously and repeated, "This is a nightmare, the beginning of an endless nightmare." The moment I grabbed that sword, I knew that all of this was real. I had transmigrated. Because at that moment, pain came. My soul, body, life, and even my genes. Everything was shattered and then reassembled. A terrifying will came with terrifying power. Do you know how powerful I am now? So powerful that the Emperor is afraid of my power. He doesn't dare to use many schemes because if he pushes me too far, I can run around under the siege of the entire country and constantly disintegrate the ruling order of the Empire, whether it's the administrative order or the military order. The Empire can't stop me, but I can stop the Empire from moving forward. As Sun Lang said this, his expression was very calm, without a trace of showing off. He was just narrating an extremely ordinary fact. And 8 years ago, when I had just arrived in this world, I was an ordinary person who didn't even have the strength to truss a chicken. Not to mention a soldier in the army. Even a teenager who hadn't practiced martial arts for long could beat me until I covered my head and ran away. 8 years. It only took me 8 years to become the most powerful life on this planet, powerful enough to shake all the orders in this world. Sun Lang said calmly, "But there's no free lunch in this world. Do you know what price I paid?" After discovering that I could pick up that sword, the fear and madness on those people's faces disappeared and were replaced by crazy joy. At this point, they wanted to make a last resort. A moment ago, they took me away from my comfortable life. The next moment, they wanted me to fight on the battlefield. They never considered my thoughts. They didn't consider whether I was willing to come or not. They didn't feel the slightest bit of guilt. They didn't care about what I thought at all. How could an ordinary person who couldn't even trust a chicken survive on the Tianyuan battlefield? Yes, the voice told me that he controlled my body. His voice rang in my head. I'll never forget his voice. He said, "Yes, you're just a container. You just need to be hard enough. You just need to be whole. Yes, I'm just a container, an ant. The big shots of the Empire can crush me easily. Why would they care about what a pawn thinks?" Sun Lang looked at Jia Sherdao gently, like an elder brother looking at his younger brother. There was reminiscence and affection in his eyes. He changed the topic again. "I still remember that a few years ago, when you went to the battlefield for the first time, I asked you to stay by my side. I remember what you looked like then. It was your first time on the battlefield. You were dressed neatly, and your armor was shiny. There wasn't a trace of dust on your boots. Your eyes were bright and a little bloodshot. It seemed like you didn't sleep much at night, but you were full of energy. You longed for battle formations, achievements, and achievements. This has been your dream since you were young. At that time, I wasn't a marshal. I could often go to the battlefield myself. High-ranking generals are usually very good at martial arts and have powerful imperial army. They can't be placed in the middle of the army as decorations. I remember that when we were charging together, you followed me closely. You were shouting and shouting. You were full of vigor. You longed for the battlefield. I've been paying attention to your appearance. You're spirited when you're charging at the enemy, but when you're truly engaged in close combat, when blood begins to spurt out and life begins to fall, when you see the broken corpses and the tragic deaths, fear appears in your eyes and your face becomes pale. The real battlefield is never as beautiful as the young people imagine it to be. Death is always the main theme. Fear and war coexist. Your complexion doesn't look too good, and your hands are even trembling slightly. This is a normal reaction. Everyone goes through this. Only after experiencing a real battle can a recruit complete their transformation. You did very well, because after the initial fear, you quickly adapted. Jia Dao listened quietly. Only when they talked about this common memory did he speak weakly. He lowered his head like a child who had done something wrong and said softly, "I vomited so much after the battle," Sun Lang said lightly. "I'm not comforting you. You performed very well. At least compared to me, you performed very well. Do you know what I was like when I first went to the battlefield? I've never cried so badly. I even peed my pants. I cried so badly that I was practically wailing. But the full-body helmet covered everything. I peed my pants, but no one noticed because I was at the front and my body was already splashed with blood. It didn't matter if I was wailing or screaming. It didn't matter if I was wetting my pants or trembling. It didn't stop me from killing the enemy because I was just a vessel. I was a puppet. An evil and powerful will control my body. He forced me, crushed me, and transformed me. I was a puppet being manipulated by him. He was my teacher. He taught me how to kill, how to wield a sword. He made me strong. My head was filled with endless battle knowledge. He forced me to witness the battlefield with my own eyes, to get used to death, to get used to killing, and to master everything he stuffed into me. After all, I was just a vessel. The stronger, the better. I'm just a vessel. No one will consider the feelings of a vessel. They can do whatever they want with me. After all, letting me replace you is just a temporary measure, a buffer. Everyone thinks that I won't be able to hold on for too long. It's only a matter of time before I collapse because I'm just an ordinary person, a weak and mediocre person from another world. Even if my body can hold on, my mind can't. They just wanted to squeeze out all my potential. I'll hold on for as long as I can. I did as they wished. Sun Lang said calmly. I held on for a very long time. It's not that I didn't think of dying. When I came back from the battlefield for the first time, I thought about it. Suicide was the only way to escape, but I couldn't die. I was a puppet, a tool. I couldn't even control my own life. I couldn't even die. How could there be such a thing in this world? How could there be such a thing? Why could they change a person's fate as they wished? Why could they push him away from a peaceful life and loved ones? Why did they force him to kill? Why did they force him to be stained with blood? Why did they force him to fight for a country that had nothing to do with him? Why did they treat him as a tool that could be discarded as soon as he broke? What did I do wrong? Why did I have to go through such a cruel thing? I don't understand. I don't understand. Why did it have to be me? The day before, I was thinking about the movie that had just been released. I was thinking about the fun and interesting games. I was thinking about my peaceful and comfortable life. But in the blink of an eye, I was slashing here and there on a battlefield. I never thought that there would be a day when I would be unparalleled on the battlefield. When I was in my hometown, it took me a lot of effort to carry 2 buckets of water. When I came here, I could actually grab a fully armed sky demon and smash it around. I could even kill a dozen sky demons within a minute without batting an eyelid. I was even more nimble than Tar Leon, who had cheated. But this wasn't what I wanted. His smile was filled with deep fatigue, sighing, and bitterness. I'm different from you. We've been fighting for decades here. Ever since you were born, your family has been thinking about you practicing martial arts. You're the son of a noble family, the legitimate son of Ningwa Mansion. You have to learn martial arts and literature, and you even have to make a name for yourself on the battlefield in the future. But I'm living in a F***king peaceful era. Our country hasn't been at war for 20 or 30 years. The last foreign army that dared to fight on our territory was completely chased away more than 70 years ago. Our country doesn't need any civilians on the battlefield anymore. Why do I have to come here and help you fight? How could such a thing happen? Sun Lang sighed. I've asked this question countless times in my heart, but I've never asked it out loud. Who would answer this question of mine? I'm afraid it would be a disdainful sneer. That's right. Why would the strong explain to the weak? Does the butcher have to explain the reason to the cattle and sheep before slaughtering them? There's no need. That's why I didn't ask. Because I know that you're all beasts. You're all beasts. You all deserve to die. I can't die. No matter how painful it is, I can't die. I can't even control my own body. I can't in my own life. The will and the sword controls my limbs and interferes with my fate. Sun Lang's tone was calm and suppressed. He didn't roar because there was no need. Hatred was engraved in his bones, so there was no need to make it loud. It had already flowed through his body and was everywhere. Since I can't die, then I'll live on. First battle, second battle, third battle, fourth battle, fifth battle. 100 beheaded, 100 broken limbs, 100 cut at the waist, 100 dismembered corpses, 100 headshots, 1,000 beheaded, 1,000 broken limbs, 1,000 cut at the waist, 1,000 dismembered corpses, 1,000 headshots. No more peeing, no more vomiting, no more crying, no more trembling, no more thinking. It's getting easier. I'm getting used to it. Sometimes I think that I might really be a F** king genius. I was delayed by my original world. I didn't know that I could learn things so quickly. I didn't know that my adaptability and endurance could be so strong. I realized that you natives from another world aren't that great after all. I thought to myself, just you wait. You destroyed my life. You took away my world. You made me unable to see my family again. You used and manipulated me like a puppet. You manipulated my life. You made me wish I was dead. You made me unable to die. Then, just you wait. Sun Lang said slowly, but I overestimated myself. Even after going through all those things, I didn't turn into a lunatic or a cold-blooded animal. I'm still F** king human. I'm still human. In our world, there's something called Stockholm Syndrome. It's a psychological state where the victim of a crime develops feelings for the perpetrator and even helps the perpetrator. This is the weakness of human nature, the sorrow of human nature. This human psychological phenomenon proves a terrifying thing, and that is, humans can actually be tamed. My situation is not quite the same, but there are similarities. After going through so many things, I actually didn't go crazy. I'm still human, so I have many thoughts. I have some strange thoughts. I entered the battlefield and did many things. I made many contributions. I also got to know many people. They didn't know my true identity and thought I was some young hero. On the battlefield, people always admire brave and strong people, so they got to know me. Many people began to acknowledge me, admire me, and respect me. Mother of Asterskir, I'm actually being hugged by a bunch of animals, idiots, sons of bitches, and bastards who deserve to be hacked to death. They flatter me and praise me, but they don't know that I hate them to death. But the will that controlled me said that I had to get to know them. I had to spread my name. It was very interesting. Those important people who knew about it all thought that I, a weakling from another world, wouldn't be able to hold on for long. But other than my own belief that I could hold on, the guy hiding in the sword also thought that I could hold on. He kept teaching me, telling me to try my best to adapt to all of this. I slowly felt that this sword spirit was not free to do as he wished. For a period of time, I even treated him as a good teacher and friend. But I was very wrong. He had ulterior motives. But this is a story for another time. I was forced by him to call those idiots who came to befriend me brothers. As time passed, more and more people gathered around me. After fighting side by side again and again, I had to admit that some of them were actually not that stupid. My reputation grew, and my contributions grew. Just as the will and the sword predicted and planned, I established my initial reputation. I even felt that my friends are not bad. After going through so many things, I actually still felt like a human. I'm actually still human. Humans will become weak. They will compromise. They will change themselves. They will change their way of thinking. Because I've experienced so many things. On the battlefield, life and death. You save me today, and I'll save you tomorrow. They didn't know the truth. They didn't treat me as an outsider. They treated me as a comrade. They even dared to entrust their lives to me. Sun Lang sighed. Later, under the influence of these bastards, I was no longer so sinister. I even knew how to smile. I convinced myself to get used to it first. I pretended to be myself so that they would let down their guard. I acted a little more normal, a little more like a saint. Putting on an act? I've read so many heroic stories back in my hometown. I imitated them, and I actually acted quite well. In addition, those important figures who came up with the plan realized that I was actually able to endure it. My rapport with the sacred sword was also getting better and better. I was already a perfect sword saint with a bright future and endless potential. They couldn't find a more suitable candidate, so after much consideration, they decided to continue as before and think of a way to ease their relationship with me. At that time, I was sneering in my heart. I felt that they were too foolish, too arrogant, and too stupid. They were born in this ignorant and backward era, so they viewed the human heart too simply. They thought that time could wear away everything, and that they could use high positions and wealth to make me forget the past. They arbitrarily believed that I was the same as them. But they were wrong. I'm someone from another world. The value of dignity, the value of happiness, the value of fate, and the value of life. They'll never understand it, and I'll never forget it. I thought that was the case, but I was completely wrong. I was wrong twice. 2 times. Sun Lang let out a long sigh. The first time, I misjudged myself. Swords and power wouldn't reduce my determination for revenge, but sincerity and true love would. I met many friends, and I also sent many of them away. They were brave people who fought for the country and the people. Some generously died, and some continued to fight. Also, I seemed to be a little too into the role. I played the role of a compassionate saint all day long, playing the role of the approachable General Jia. As I played, even I believed myself. My thoughts were gradually changing because many people around me were treating me with sincerity. They basically didn't know about my past, and they treated me as a comrade and a leader who could entrust everything to them. Also, at that time, I received the first letter from the Jia family. This is the work of the Heavenly Policy Residents. I've taken the place of a person and his name. Those big shots are one-sidedly trying to find a home for me. The legitimate son of the honorable residents isn't bad at all. After all, he's a duke. He's from an aristocratic family and a wealthy family of the empire. Coupled with his rising military achievements, he's simply incredible. Hearing this, Jia Shidao's face became paler and paler. He clenched his teeth tightly. Sun Lang sighed. But they were wrong again. They thought that an ordinary person like me would be fascinated by wealth. Compared with a duke with military merit, which identity was better? Of course, it was the latter. But they were wrong. I didn't want it. I was Sun Lang. I was an earthling. I didn't want to forget all of this. How could I forget all of this? But even my name was taken away. I could only be surnamed Jia. I didn't want to. But that letter... Sigh. Madame sure loved her grandson very much. When I saw her letter, I actually cried. I haven't cried for a long time. I thought my tears had dried up. But I didn't. I was actually still human. After reading that letter, I missed home. I wanted a home. I wanted my family. I wanted someone to care for me and love me. I didn't want to open my eyes all day thinking about fighting and killing. Then you came. So did Shui Baochai and Lin Daiyu. Many things happened. My official position was getting higher and higher. My reputation was getting better and better. Many people admired me, praised me, and respected me. I was corrupted by your sugar-coated bullets. My way of thinking is actually slowly changing. As expected, a comfortable life will corrupt a person. In the past few years, I've slowly recovered and even gained the initiative. I'm already used to the battlefield. I can even derive pleasure from war. I feel that war is a very interesting game. I think, how about forget it? This is actually quite good. I originally wanted to give you a hard stab and destroy your empire. I wanted your empire to be wiped out by the Sky Demon. Later, I changed my mind. I think at most, I'll take care of those bastards. You're innocent. I even think that it's not bad to have a family. Surname Jia. I'll be surnamed Jia for now. I'll change it back later. I even started dreaming that after the war, I would get married and become a high-ranking official. I would marry many wives. I would discuss the emperor in the Golden Palace every day and become a powerful minister. Then, I woke up from my dream. On the Great Barren Mountain, I was viciously stabbed. I woke up from my dream again. Everything I had was taken away from me. Everything I had done for the past 6 years was overruled. The sword spirit of the holy sword that I saw as my partner had been plotting to devour my soul and take over my body. And Bai Wei, who I saw as my master and father, also viciously stabbed me in the back. At that time, I was stunned. It was just like when I was first brought into this world 8 years ago. I didn't know what had happened. I was thinking about what was going on. How could this happen? How could this happen? I feel like I'm the idiot. I'm thinking, what the F*** is wrong with me? So many things have happened, but I'm still dreaming. I'm still childish. I haven't turned into a monster. I'm still King human. I'm thinking, everything was just my wishful thinking. Everything was just perfunctory. They've always been on guard against me. They've never been at ease. They know that I'm an outsider. They think that I'm an unstable factor. No matter if I still harbor hatred or not, they won't let me go. Sun Lang's smile gradually faded. His words were clear and concise. His tone was sincere. F***CK, you F***CK, F***CK. Chapter 725. Do you understand? Do you understand? Do you understand? Sun Lang repeated the question 3 times. The pain and resentment that tore his wound open again twisted into evil pleasure. This was the function of the human body. When the body was stimulated by pain, the endogenous opioid peptides would be released to fight against the pain and produce twisted pleasure. He had never done anything like this before. He had never completely revealed all his experiences in pain. Whether it was Zhao Yunlong or Zhang Yinluo, the truth that they knew was only a part of it. They had never seen the entirety of their own hearts. The soul was fragile, unstable, and changeable. The soul wandered between light and darkness. The soul was fickle. This was the case for human beings. They were easily affected by the outside world and easily changed by fate. And Jia Sherdao, his former cousin, former comrade of Tian Yuan, and former brother, experienced it himself today. He witnessed it with his own eyes today. The transmigrator from Earth, the visitor from the outer realms, the peerless general who once dazzled the 6 armies, the reincarnated war saint who once stood tall, saw Sun Lang's pain, anger, and darkness. What I mean is, you understand it completely now, don't you? Sun Lang's smile had completely disappeared. His emotions seemed to have disappeared. Like a robot, he patted Jia Sherdao's shoulder and asked in a cold tone, I should be clear enough. The cause and effect, everything, my origin, my relationship with the Rongwa Mansion, my experience, my view of the world, everything I've encountered. You should understand it all now. He said this and then asked, We've been brothers for a few years. You know me, and I know you. You're a good boy. You're sensible. You know right and wrong. You're young, so you still think that the world is either black or white. You won't mix with mud. So, you should understand. Jia Sherdao looked at him blankly. His eyes were weak and helpless, hiding an inexplicable plea. Sun Lang said, You understand, right? Who's right and who's wrong? I don't think I've done anything wrong from the beginning to the end, right? Was that the case? Actually, after I crawled out of the great desolate mountain, I found a random place to bury myself. I didn't move for 7 or 8 days. I was thinking about what I had done in the past few years. I was thinking about what I had experienced in the past 6 years. I was wondering if I had done something wrong to end up like this. That's right. They kidnapped me and forced me to fight. They forced me to kill the sky demon. I fought and killed them. I had no enmity with those aliens, but I ended up killing them. This is my fault, but it doesn't seem to have anything to do with you, does it? If I were to die at the hands of the sky demon, that would be a matter of course. But why were you the ones who plotted to kill me? Not only did I not provoke you, but I also seem to have contributed greatly, right? Without me, how many more of you would have died? Millions or tens of millions? Without me, how long would this battle have lasted? 10 years or 100 years? What was going on? What are you trying to do? Can't you be reasonable? He repeated as he patted Jia Sherdao's shoulder and slowly exhaled. I thought about it for a long time, and I finally came to a conclusion. I don't think I've done anything wrong. I came here to help you fight, to kill your enemies, to reform your military system, to compile your military code, to win many battles for you, to kill many sky demon for you, and in the end, to be burned by you after you've outlived your usefulness. I don't think it's my fault, right? Isn't that right? He rambled on like a resentful wife, but Jia Sherdao felt colder and colder as he listened. He had a premonition. He seemed to know what his brother was trying to say. As expected, at this point, Sun Lang paused, and his tone became gentle. Cousin, oh no, I'm sorry, I can't call you that now. I'm just a commoner from the outer region, and I don't dare to climb up the branches of your prestigious family. As a person, you can't be so shameless, right? He put his arm around Jia Sherdao's shoulder as if he was drunk and swayed his body. He turned to look at Jia Sherdao and said seriously, So, young Duke Jia, you're a kind person. You've read books and you're knowledgeable. Tell me, haven't I done anything wrong in the past 6 years? Jia Sherdao nodded slowly. He didn't even know how he made sound. Yes. In the end, I was burned after I've outlived my usefulness. Shouldn't I? Yes. Am I going to take revenge? Yes. Sun Lang nodded with satisfaction, and then he said, But to take revenge, you have to have an enemy. The goal has to be accurate, so that you can do things in an orderly manner, right? Yes. Then, who's the enemy? Sun Lang's expression became meaningful, and his voice became low. He turned his head and didn't look at Jia Sherdao's expression. He looked at the ground, and no one knew where his gaze fell. In other words, who should I blame for the hardships I've suffered in the past 6 years? Jia Sherdao couldn't answer this question. Or rather, he didn't dare to answer this question. His body kept shaking, and his whole body was soaked in cold sweat. His lips were trembling. Fear dominated his body. He had never been so scared before. The person next to him used to be his most respected brother, his most trusted relative. But now he was so unfamiliar, so distant, so scary. Sun Lang's voice was close, but it seemed to be far away. At that time, I thought for a while about who I should take revenge on. I had to make a list. The emperor killed the loyal. He was cruel, selfish, and despicable. He deserved to die. Tensei province repaid kindness with ingratitude. He played with people's hearts. He deserved to die. Bai Yue couldn't tell right from wrong. He was foolishly loyal and ridiculous. He deserved to die. The devil ancestor hid a knife in his smile. He was evil. He deserved to die. Every sentence was made up of hatred, exuding a strong, murderous aura, condensing endless hatred. Jia Sherdao listened to every sentence. His heart seemed to be hanging high in the sky, and under his feet was a boiling sea of lava. His heart was hanging high, and the burning heat and the cold death tormented his body. He hadn't heard that sentence yet. He hadn't heard Sun Lang say that sentence. But he knew that it was inevitable. Sun Lang listed a dozen things, finished them in one breath, exhaled, and then said, At that time, I thought so much in one breath. If I killed them one by one, this country would probably collapse. But it doesn't matter. I don't care. It's none of my business. This isn't my country. Why the F***CK do I care about it? I just feel that something isn't right. It seems like something is missing. This list doesn't seem to be complete. There's still one culprit who isn't on it. Who is it? Jia Sherdao closed his eyes in pain. He couldn't even beg. Sun Lang said faintly, Then I figured it out. At first, I blamed all the problems on the Sky Demon. If it weren't for the Sky Demon's invasion, the Empire wouldn't have sent me here in desperation. But first of all, the Sky Demon is dead. Second of all, I realized that this isn't the main point of the problem. Whether the Sky Demon invades or not, it's none of my business. Even if they win, destroy this world, and all of you humans, what does it have to do with me? I'm from another world. No matter how ferocious the Sky Demon is, it can't hit me. So, why should I blame them? It doesn't seem objective to blame all the problems on the Empire. Although they're trash and can't beat the Sky Demon, that's their business. Whether they win or lose, whether 10 million people die or 100 million die, what does it have to do with me? What does the survival of this world have to do with an ordinary human? Then, here's the problem. I, Sun Lang, an ordinary earthling, should have lived an ordinary life. What exactly is it that made me come here to sacrifice myself for the greater good? What made me come here to sacrifice myself for the greater good? I was stabbed twice by a group of stupid humans and sacrificed everything I had to create a happy life for all of you. That's the key to the matter. That's the culprit. Who is it? Who is it? Who is it? He turned around and faced Jia Sherdao. He pressed his head and forced him to open his eyes. It's your cousin. It's the Ronghua family. It's the Jia family. It's you. If the Ronghua family hadn't given birth to that bastard, he wouldn't have run away from home. If he hadn't run away from home, he wouldn't have participated in that stupid plan. If he hadn't participated in that plan, if he hadn't been so useless, he wouldn't have died. As long as that bastard didn't exist, I wouldn't have come to this world. Whether it's the sky demon or the humans, it has nothing to do with me even if you destroy this planet. I don't care about your life or death. I don't care who wins or loses. I'm just an ordinary person. I don't want to care, and I can't care. But who sent me here? Who caused me to leave my hometown and never see my family again? It's the Tensei province. It's the Jia family. It's him who caused me to transmigrate. He extended his tragic fate onto me, destroyed my life, and paid for your hateful world. All of this originally had nothing to do with me, but King experienced it. Why did this happen? Huh? Even here, Sun Lang's words were not fierce. It was as if he was just narrating a story that had nothing to do with him. Now, do you understand? Sun Lang said calmly. Do you think I'll use that name again? Do you think I'll play that person again? Replace that person's identity, return to his home, call his grandmother grandmother, inherit his family business and title, abandon my past and name, and live on with his identity? Do you think I'll do that? Do you think I should hate you? Should I hate you? Chapter 726. Tell me, should I hate you? Should I hate you? It was just a question, and his tone was very light. But it was like the fiercest hammer strike, knocking Jia Sherdao to the ground. Jia Sherdao, who had come aggressively and glared at them, was now in a daze. He sat on the ground like a dog in a rainy day. He couldn't refute. He used to be eloquent, but now he was tongue-tied. This wasn't a situation that could be changed with eloquence. This wasn't a problem that could be solved with a sharp tongue. This problem was unsolvable because it already had a self-evident answer. Sun Lang was a victim. That was obvious. He was originally from another world. Even if the Tianyuan War was a bloodbath, it had nothing to do with him. In another world, he had no responsibilities or obligations. However, he was unreasonably captured to this world and forced to participate in battles. His body and mind were greatly ravaged and tortured. After he established great merits and glory, what awaited him was unhesitatingly betrayal. This kind of thing, no matter how much one talked about it, was unjust and wrong. So he had the right to hate, the right to resent, and the reason to take revenge. The spearhead was not only pointed at the emperor, not only at Tensei province, but also at the Ronghua mansion. But as a member of the Jia mansion, Jia Sherdao could only smile bitterly and couldn't say anything to refute. Any debate was useless. The Jia mansion was also a victim, and the Ronghua mansion had also lost their grandson. It was all the emperor's fault. These words were useless. Sun Lang had made it very clear that he didn't care whether the Jia mansion was innocent or not. He didn't care about the result of the war. All of this had nothing to do with him. He was originally an ordinary person without any worries in another world. Who caused him to come to this world? Who directly caused his transmigration? It was obvious who it was. Jia Sherdao had nothing to say. In front of such hatred that couldn't be washed away by the water of the four seas, explaining lost all meaning. It didn't matter whether he was innocent or not. Hatred and rationality were contradictory things to begin with. Revenge was the product of unreasonable and intense emotions. He couldn't say anything. In front of such a reality, in front of Sun Lang, a word of sorry was too heavy. It was so heavy that he didn't have a right to say it. But now, he only felt very sad, a sadness that was etched into his bones. He sat on the ground, raised his head, and stared blankly at the person standing in front of him. Even today, he had revealed all of his past and origin, revealing all of his most painful memories, tearing open the scabbed wounds again, and facing the dark past again. Even an outsider like himself would feel extremely sad and shocked by such a story. It was hard to imagine how painful and torturous it would be for someone who had experienced it personally. However, the person in front of him still had a calm expression. He didn't see any sadness or hatred. It was as if he was telling a story that had nothing to do with him. It wasn't that he had gotten over it, but that he had long since gotten used to it. He had immersed all his hatred and sorrow into his body, every inch of his bones, every drop of his blood, and every word he said. Jia Sherdao clenched his teeth tightly and clenched his fists. His heart throbbed violently. He had once regarded his cousin as his lifelong confidant. He felt that he was his cousin's best partner and assistant. He was the person who understood him the most in the world. He thought that the two brothers had a tacit understanding. He hoped that one day, the two of them would enter the court at the same time. His brother would be the first minister, and he would be the second minister. If the brothers worked together, they would definitely be able to change the world. But now he knew that his brother wasn't his brother, and he had never understood the person in front of him. The anger he had shown before was like a child's. He was angry at his brother's silence and blamed his brother's alienation and avoidance. However, this anger was insignificant. In front of the bloody truth, his sadness and anger were not worth mentioning. He couldn't help but think of the situation 2 years ago. The days in the army were his happiest days. Although the war was hard, everyone had the same dream and fought for the same reason. They were surrounded by trustworthy fellow soldiers, and by their side was an elder brother whom they could follow for the rest of their lives. Everyone was a good person. His brother was as bright as the sun, and the sun shone on everyone. He was very generous to his soldiers, but merciless to his enemies. He was cruel and kind, evil and kind, cold and easygoing. He had two different faces when facing his enemies and friends. Everyone liked this trait. He was the kind of comrade and superior that you could show off to everyone. He had won every battle, had outstanding military achievements, was young, and had a bright future. Everyone believed that he would be the future pillar of the empire. Everyone liked him very much. It wasn't just because he could fight. Usually, he had the vigor of a young man and could chat with everyone. He had endless stories in his head. Some could make people's blood boil, and they couldn't help but roar with excitement. Some could also make people's blood boil, and they couldn't help but laugh meaningfully. Being approachable and courteous to the wise seemed to be a trait that all people in power must have, but there were not many people who could do it well. This was because no matter how courteous the nobles were, they would still involuntarily show disdain and arrogance when facing lowly peasants. No matter how kind they appeared on the surface, the pride in their bones could not be hidden. This was because a courteous attitude came from one's cultivation and identity, not from the soul's sense of identity. But he could do it. It seemed that in his eyes, everyone was the same. Jia Sherdao used to believe that this was the trait of a great person. He felt that his brother did have this charm. He could treat everyone equally, and he knew what equality and respect were. So many people gathered around him. He used to be proud of his brother. But now everything had collapsed. The brother who smiled, the brother who talked dirty, the brother who teased everyone, the brother who talked and laughed with the soldiers. Such a person who was like the sun, who smiled all day and brought warmth to others all day, was actually burdened with a painful past and deep hatred. While he was smiling, he must have been hesitating in his heart. He was hesitating whether to take revenge or how to deal with his own affairs. The sadness of never being able to see his family, the pain of being treated as a puppet, the joy of being trusted and respected by his fellow soldiers, and the joy of being supported by the soldiers. This kind of conflict and dilemma had probably tortured him for a very, very long time. But he didn't know anything. He stood beside his brother with a clear conscience and treated him as his cousin. He thought he knew him very well, but he didn't know anything. And this wasn't the most important thing. The word from before still echoed in his ears. His hatred, his murderous intent, the madness that went deep into his bones, and the murderous ravings. This was normal. It was normal for people who had experienced that kind of thing, whose hope and happiness had been shattered twice in a row, to do anything. Even if they were crazy enough to destroy everything, it was normal. Jia Sherdao closed his eyes in pain, but tears flowed down his face and couldn't be stopped. Sun Lang's narration was very calm, but he could imagine how Sun Lang felt at that time. He struggled out of the bloody battle in the Great Bear Mountain and into the war, but lost everything because he had nowhere to go and couldn't go home. Everything that had happened in the past 6 years was just an illusion. This war had started with pain and ended with despair. His hope had been shattered and his home had been taken away. All that was left was a man who was filled with rage and hatred. Other than hatred and revenge, he had nothing else. So he could only take revenge and hate. He listed the culprits crazily, and the hatred continued and magnified. It wasn't just the emperor or Tensei province. The hatred devoured the soul, and madness and malice continued to spread. So the Jia family was guilty, and even the whole world was guilty. It was normal for people who had experienced that kind of thing to think and do anything. But 2 years had passed. The empire didn't light the fire, and the Ronghua mansion existed peacefully. No one died. He didn't do anything. Jia Sherdao clenched his teeth, and his tears flowed like a river. He didn't do anything. For more than 2 years, he had been alone. The hatred that could burn the world was surging in his body, and then he had suppressed it time and time again. What kind of power could suppress such hatred? What kind of heart could control such anger? He would never understand. He only knew that he had never understood his elder brother. He had never understood this person. His heart was throbbing violently, and his emotions were surging. Under the ups and downs of his state of mind, he lost control of his true qi. In a burst of pain, Jia Sherdao spat out a mouthful of blood and fell to the ground. Sun Lang shook his head slightly. He came to Jia Sherdao's side and pressed his hand on his chest. Strong internal strength flowed in to help him stabilize the chaotic true qi. Jia Sherdao's eyes were crying. He barely reached out and grabbed Sun Lang's arm. Sun Lang said indifferently, "You must have rushed here through the night. You need a rest." Jia Sherdao's voice became very weak. He even struggled to speak. He said, "Your news was given to me by my father." Sun Lang was startled. He nodded and said, "I know. You go to sleep first." Hearing this, Jia Sherdao showed an extremely complicated and sad smile. Then he fainted. Sun Lang was silent for a moment. Then he sighed, picked Jia Sherdao up, and kicked the door open. He saw Wei Zhongxian standing by the door with a calm expression, as usual. Sun Lang stared and said, "Wow, you were eavesdropping." Wei Zhongxian bowed and said, "Master didn't hide it from me before. I thought it would be like usual this time, but I didn't expect it to be like this. I heard it, but there's nothing I can do. Master, do you want to kill me?" Sun Lang snorted. "Where's the empty room?" Wei Zhongxian immediately led the way. "Master, this way, please." The master and servant took Jia Sherdao on their way. Neither of them mentioned killing him again. After walking for a while, Wei Zhongxian suddenly said, "Master." Sun Lang replied, "Yes. If anyone dares to say that you're not a good person, I'll slap him to death. F***CKU. It's not your turn to call me a good person, old eunuch." "Master, you're talking nonsense again." "Then, where did you get the news, Master Sherdao?" Hearing this, Sun Lang stopped and frowned. "I'm not sure. It might be a bit troublesome because it was his father, Jia Su, who gave him the news." Chapter 727. Jia Sherdao had a dream. It was a very, very long dream. He dreamed that he had returned to the past. He had been freed from years of confinement and had gone north to join the army with his father's permission and his family's expectations. He met his cousin whom he hadn't seen for a long time. The last time they had met was a long time ago. At that time, they were all children, and now they didn't remember each other. Too much time had passed, and now they had grown up. His brother, who was born in the Ningguo mansion, had become a famous general in the 6 armies. At that time, He had very complicated feelings about his cousin. There was curiosity, dissatisfaction, and a little admiration. He had heard about his cousin's deeds and knew that he had been a troublemaker for the Ronwa mansion a few years ago. He didn't expect that in just a few years, he had been reborn and had become so successful. He was dissatisfied with the other parties running away from home a few years ago. This daring action made the Ningwa mansion become a frightened bird. When the city gate caught fire, the fish in the moat would suffer. In order to prevent him from imitating, the mansion imposed the strictest confinement on him. All of this was thanks to his cousin. He didn't know how many times he had scolded his cousin in the past few years. But in addition to curiosity and dissatisfaction, he really admired his cousin. No matter what, since he had made meritorious contributions on the battlefield and become famous in the army, there must be something extraordinary about him. But admiration didn't mean that he had to grovel and flatter his brother. He, Jia Sherdao, didn't go north to join the army to take advantage of his relatives. Since the troublemaker of the Rongwa mansion could make a great career on the battlefield, then the troublemaker of the Ningwa mansion could also. At that time, he had been holding his breath. Although his cousin was indifferent to him and didn't have the enthusiasm of a brother in the family, and didn't take care of his future in the army, he still did his duty as an elder brother. He had learned a lot from his cousin, whether it was the skills of battle formations or strategizing. After all, there was a distance of blood and fire between the military books and the battlefield. Time passed quickly, and the fledgling on the battlefield had fully grown wings. He finally stood out, made a brilliant contribution, and spread his name. His relationship with his brother had also improved a lot. The two of them were no longer as awkward and distant as when they first met. Instead, they slowly became closer. They first became good friends, then real brothers. During this process, he gradually became convinced by his brother's charisma, respected him, and admired him. He felt that his brother was a very powerful person. His brother seemed to have a unique quality, and he firmly believed that it was the quality of a great person. Obviously, his brother was a rare genius, a hero born in the chaotic world of Tianyuan. The Sky Demon's disaster in the Divine Land would inevitably end in his hands, and the new era would continue under his feet into the future. Jia Sherdao thought so, and so did the people around his brother. He dreamed that one day, everyone would completely defeat the Sky Demon under his brother's leadership. The imperial court would reward his brother according to his merits, and his brother would enter the imperial court to worship him. He would assist his brother as usual. The brothers were of one mind, and their strength could cut through gold. The new battlefield became the imperial court, and the two brothers worked together to sweep away the accumulated abuses and clutter of the empire. As his brother said, after the war, it was time to establish order for the people and establish eternal peace. He was looking forward to all this, and he was also looking forward to the beautiful golden age that his brother had described. But that day did not come. A sudden news crushed everything. After the news of the battle in the Great Bear Mountain came, the whole empire was excited and the world was shocked. The chaos of the Sky Demon, which had lasted for decades and burned the world with the flames of war, had finally ended. The terrible enemy had finally died in the hands of the empire. What an honor! What an outstanding achievement! Such joy should be shared by all the people of the empire. But Jia Sherdao was not happy at all, because his brother did not come back. He could not feel joy, or relief. Living until the end of the war was the best wish for every soldier. The end of the Tianyuan War was like a dream. It meant that everyone could finally end the years of bloodshed on the battlefield, return home, and reunite with their families. It meant that the imperial court would reward them according to their merits, and everyone would receive enough rewards. But Jia Sherdao was not happy at all, not at all. Without his brother, everything was meaningless. After being muddle-headed for 2 days, he forced himself to pull himself together. He was his brother's only family in the army, and he had to fulfill his duty as a blood relative. But at that time, he found a huge contradiction. He could not bring back his brother's bones, because the imperial court said that the Great Barren Mountain was destroyed by a huge explosion and nothing was left. In other words, his brother's bones were gone. He was unwilling to give up and wanted to ask about the details of the battle in the Great Barren Mountain, but the special envoy of the imperial court said that it was a top secret of the empire and could not be revealed to anyone for the time being. Everything seemed to be shrouded in a huge and mysterious mystery, and all his questions could not be answered. Unwilling to give up, he secretly investigated, but he was surprised to find that all the clues were covered up by an invisible black hand layer by layer, sinking everything related to the great desolate mountain into endless darkness. He wanted to go deeper into the darkness, but the envoy of the imperial court came again. The envoy not only brought a letter from his father, but also a vague and dangerous message. The envoy quoted a sentence from his cousin when he was alive. "Sometimes ignorance is the greatest happiness." This implied threat could not shake his determination, but he could not continue investigating. It was like diving. The deeper you dive, the darker your surroundings become, and the greater the pressure from the darkness. The force squeezed you and pushed you up. If you insisted on continuing, the force would only grow stronger until you were injured or even crushed into a meat patty. The deeper you dive, the darker your surroundings become, and the greater the resistance. But the darkness and the pressure in the darkness had already explained many things. His brother's death was not that simple. To him, this was like a bolt from the blue. He had read many history books. There were too many examples of capable ministers dying miserably and the emperor killing people with evil intentions. There were too many examples of similar things in history books. But no one had expected the emperor to do it in such a hurry. Moreover, it was done so seamlessly. His emotions rose and fell, from sadness to doubt, from doubt to shock, from shock to anger, and from anger to hatred. He guessed the truth, but there was nothing he could do. Anger filled his chest, but there was nothing he could do. The murderer was the emperor, and half of the imperial court was covering for him. This kind of world, this kind of country, this kind of court, and this kind of ruler. Then he pretended to be disheartened, hung up his seal, and resigned to return to his hometown. The so-called suffering, humiliation, and looking for a good opportunity were not valid. He would not have any opportunities in the imperial court because he was that person's younger brother. The so-called scheming of an emperor was first suspicion and jealousy. He had to stay away from the imperial court, carry an unforgettable hatred, restrain his claws and teeth, and even become a monk. He had to hide in the depths of the mountains, silently planning and preparing for some things. He was not afraid. He was still young, and he could still wait for a long, long time. Thus, he became a monk and became a Taoist priest. He pretended to be indifferent to the mortal world and devoted himself to the mountains and rivers, but he never relaxed. He desperately recalled everything related to his brother's teachings, the words his brother said to him in his free time, his brother's thoughts. He gathered all these things together, searching for the power to overturn the country. He firmly believed that he could find it, because his brother had mentioned something similar before. He believed that, sooner or later, there would be a day when he would seek justice for his brother. But something terrible happened. One day, a person covered in blood stumbled into the Taoist temple. It was his father's trusted aide. He suddenly had a bad premonition. After opening the letter, he was completely stunned. The messenger had died because of his heavy injuries. His father's handwriting was very messy. His father told him to quickly escape to the imperial capital, kowtow in front of the emperor, and ask for help from the imperial court, because the matter in the letter was so absurd that he could not believe it at all. He rushed back home in the middle of the night. The once magnificent and imposing Ningwa mansion had turned into ruins. He saw the corpses of his parents, his uncles, and the maids and servants. Ningwa mansion was completely gone. There was not a single survivor. On one of the collapsed walls, it was shockingly written that the murderer was Sun Lang, the sky demon of the extraterritorial domain. His heart was filled with hatred. His eyes were bleeding, and he let out a beast-like roar. But the name Sun Lang was inexplicably familiar to him, making him feel extremely uneasy. For some reason, he made an extremely inexplicable and terrifying association. As a result, he once again set off towards the Rongwa residence. He traveled day and night without sleep or rest. Everything around him was grotesque and variegated. The passers-by looked at him as he galloped on his horse. Some people showed sympathy, while others sneered. It was as if overnight, everyone knew what had happened to him. Everyone recognized him. Their expressions constantly changed, like the faces of ghosts from hell. Whether it was sympathy or mockery, everything eventually turned into crazy laughter. More and more people appeared along the way. They even formed 2 rows of human walls. The heads were densely packed, and they were all looking at him. The numb faces mechanically changed their expressions. At first, it was sympathy, then it was mockery, and then it was sighing. They seemed to have seen through everything, as if they already knew the result. So they were all laughing. More and more people gathered. They formed 2 human walls, blocking both sides. They watched, and laughed softly. The 2 human walls opened up a path, and he ran on this path. But he turned a blind eye to all of this. He only wanted a result, an answer. At the end of the path, he found it. He saw the raging fire in Rongwa Manor. He saw the people wailing in the flames. He had seen those familiar faces not long ago. After his elder brother died, he came to the manor. He saw old Madame Sure, who was suppressing her grief and commanding calmly. He saw the women crying in a group. Everyone's faces were filled with extreme shock, panic, and sadness. It was as if the sky had collapsed, because there were no more men in Rongwa Manor. At that time, he felt that Rongwa Manor would not be able to hold on for much longer, because the only hope had dissipated and the only pillar had collapsed. The house that was forcefully supported could only sway in the wind and rain. Perhaps in the next moment, it would collapse. Now it had indeed collapsed. He saw the flames devouring the fragile bodies. Innocent people were struggling and pleading in the flames. He saw the flames burning and spreading everywhere, but he was shocked to find that what made the flames burn was blood. He ran in the flames. He shouted loudly and cursed angrily, because he knew that the murderer had not gone far. That person was called Sun Lang. He shouted and cursed, wanting the murderer to come out. As he wished, the murderer really appeared. The fiercely burning flames automatically dispersed. The grand buildings and exquisite houses turned into ashes. When he saw the scene behind the flames, his entire body froze, because he saw the most terrifying, nightmarish scene. He saw old Madame Sure's head, that kind face, that gray hair. The head of the Jia family's ancestor was held in someone's hand. The expression of the old madam before she died was frozen on her face. Shock, fear, and despair. He knew why the old madam had such an expression, because such emotions were also what he was feeling at this moment. Because the person holding the old madam's head was his cousin. It was his cousin who had died long ago. The old madam's head was held in the hand of her most beloved grandson. His cousin held the head of his most beloved and closest grandmother in his hand. His cousin was smiling, but that smile was incomparably unfamiliar. It was like the darkest abyss, swallowing and spitting out endless darkness. His voice was so familiar, but also incomparably unfamiliar. His cousin said to him, "You've come." He madly rushed forward, biting, attacking, and roaring. Everything was useless, but he tirelessly repeated it. He questioned, he cried, he could not understand why such a thing had happened. He could not understand why his cousin who had come back from the dead would do such a vicious thing to his family. Then this demon, with a cold smile, told him a story. He told her his story, a story of a freak combination of factors. He was not her cousin. His name was Sun Lang. He came from another world. He was originally an ordinary person who was carefree and carefree. But he was forcibly summoned to this world and suffered an unbearable fate. His life was destroyed, his fate was rewritten, and everything about him was changed. He told many, many stories. He told him about the pain he had endured and the changes in his state of mind. He once accepted his fate and decided to start anew in this world, preparing to live as a new person. He was robbed of his hope again. Everything he had for 6 years was denied and trampled on. He lost everything again 6 years later. His hope was robbed and trampled on by the same group of people for the second time. So he decided to take revenge. Not only the empire, not only the Tensei province. There was also the Ronwo residents, the Jia family, and this world. The Avenger in front of him was roaring, hating, and laughing wildly. Like an Avenger who had crawled out of hell, he let the flames on his body burn the whole world. Along with the declaration of vengeance, everything in the surroundings suddenly changed. The sky became dark, and the earth cracked open. The peaceful empire was ignited with an inextinguishable flame. Countless terrifying demons rushed out of the lead-colored vortex in the sky, and the evil spirits of hell also crawled out of the cracked earth. Magnificent cities fell one after another, and large batches of innocent people died tragically. The destruction continued without end. He looked at this hellish scene and let out a cry of despair. He was powerless to stop all of this. He could only cry in vain. He looked at his former elder brother and called out his name, crying for him to stop. He begged and pleaded, but he did not get any response. He rushed to his elder brother and begged him to stop, but his elder brother only sneered and pressed down on his face. He flailed his arms and legs, struggling constantly. He felt suffocated, like he was drowning. His consciousness became heavier and heavier, heavier and heavier. Then he suddenly opened his eyes. The sun was bright, and his body was warm. The hellish scene was no longer there. The murderous demon in his dream was close at hand. He sat by the bed and took his hand back as if nothing had happened. Obviously, this was the culprit who had suffocated him before. Jia Sherdao stared at the person in front of him in a daze. For a moment, he had mixed feelings and couldn't say anything. Sun Lang said coldly, "How old are you? You're still talking in your sleep." Jia Sherdao thought of the terrible nightmare from before. Feeling guilty, he couldn't help but shrink his head. He then realized that it was a dream, and the sun was bright outside. He must have slept all night. He didn't dare to look at the person in front of him because he felt guilty. He whispered, What did I say?" Sun Lang said lightly, "Your face is flushed, your breathing is accelerated, your hands and feet are dancing, and your waist is exerting force as if you want to force your legs apart. You're making excited sleep talk, saying something about exerting force, and that it's no problem even if you use both of your legs together. Then you're forcefully opening your mouth as if you're making some kind of terrible suggestion, as if you want to eat something. I didn't expect you to have this kind of interest after not seeing you for 2 years." At first, Jia Sherdao was listening in fear. Later, he felt more and more that something was wrong. In such a serious situation, he was saying such crazy things just like before. So he subconsciously said angrily, "Brother, we're talking about serious business." After saying that, he felt that something was wrong, because this person wasn't his brother. He wasn't qualified to call him brother, and as a younger brother, he was too incompetent. He didn't dare to look at Sun Lang. Like a child who had been bullied, he sat on the bed dejectedly. Looking at the sheets, he whispered, "I'm sorry." The sarcasm or indifference he expected didn't happen. Disgusting. Jia Sherdao looked up in surprise. "Huh?" The man in front of him looked disgusted. "Do you have a split personality? Have you been possessed? How did you become a submissive after sleeping for one night? Did you awaken in that terrible dream of yours?" Jia Sherdao shook his head in a daze. "No." "Then get up quickly. F***CK. Give me some air, it's disgusting." Sun Lang stood up and kicked the bed leg hard. "The Bai family is in a mess now. Since you're here, then get to work." Jia Sherdao shivered and hurriedly got up. As usual, he was in a mess, and his brother was scolding, but this time was a little different from the past. His brother seemed to be the same brother as before, but he didn't dare to be as casual as before. A heavy stone pressed down on his heart. He felt very uncomfortable. When he followed his elder brother out of the door, he asked in a low voice, "Can I still call you elder brother?" The figure walking in front, who had already opened the door, stopped. In the morning light, the person in his memory turned around, looking like a fierce hooligan. He said in a rough voice, "Huh? What did you say?" Jia Sherdao shrank his head and whispered, Nothing, F asterisk CK, 250. The person in front swaggered forward. Follow me. Jia Dao said, oh, and hurriedly followed. For some reason, he felt a little better. Chapter 728. It was said that after experiencing a great mental shock, people would turn all their energy to something else to numb themselves and escape from reality. For example, some people would overeat after a breakup. For example, some people would work extra hard after a breakup. For example, some people would choose to come out of the closet after a breakup. Probably it should be like this. Of course, Sun Lang wasn't an ordinary person. After a breakup, he was furious and swore to let his ex-girlfriend and her father feel the piercing of justice. Of course, he was just saying it. Of course, this wasn't the main point. The main point was that young Jia Dao had learned the shocking truth overnight and realized that he had lost Oni-chan forever. So at this moment, his feelings were extremely complicated. Like an ostrich, he didn't dare to face reality and could only divert his energy to numb himself. He was pulled in by Sun Lang. After all, the chaos in the Bai Castle needed someone to preside over it, and Jia Dao was trustworthy in terms of ability and loyalty. He was an excellent coolie. After Jia Dao was entrusted with an important task by Sun Lang, it took him about 2 hours to understand the situation, and then he immediately threw himself into the intense work. He was good at planning and commanding. In the words of Sun Lang's hometown, he was a qualified leader of an organization. His greatest achievement in the Tianyuan War was that he was active in the 2 counties of Huang and Yi, where he mobilized the army and people to build an impregnable defense line and used it to fend off the extraterrestrial demons. He was a general who was very good at defense. It could be said that such a person was making the best use of his talents in the Bai Castle. Because the Bai Castle had experienced a great disaster, it was full of ruins and people were uncertain. Furthermore, it had to be firmly nailed in Qinzhou to realize Sun Lang's ambition of uniting the 3 states and nibbling away the northern border of the empire. How to transform the half-broken Bai Castle was a great test of the organizer's ability and adaptability. And Jia Dao was obviously such a talent. Looking at Jia Dao, who was buried in piles of books, Sun Lang turned around and slowly walked away. Jia Dao raised his eyes and glanced at his brother's back. Then he sighed and looked confused. Sun Lang left the room and came to the courtyard. Wei Zhongxian appeared from the shadows again and silently came to Sun Lang's side. He smiled and said, "Master is truly skilled." Sun Lang looked at him darkly. "I feel like you're mocking me." Wei Zhongxian was surprised and puzzled. "Ridicule? Why did Master say that?" "This old servant is sincerely praising you. Clearly, the situation was already out of control, but after one night, you were still able to make young Master Xiangdao listen to you obediently. You are truly capable." Sun Lang's gaze became even more sinister. "You really are mocking me." Wei Zhongxian's expression became even more innocent. "Is there anything Master has done worth laughing at?" Sun Lang's expression became subtle. He looked away. "Nothing. It's just my imagination. Damn it, it does feel weird. Ever since Xiangdao woke up, I felt that the atmosphere was a bit strange. The air seems to be filled with a gay atmosphere. What the hell? If Jia Dao was her sister, then this would be such a delightful plot. The Oni-chan that she once admired and respected was not her biological Oni-chan. Furthermore, she bore a blood feud and had extremely complicated feelings about the Jia family and even wanted to kill them. The confused girl couldn't take the blow and fainted. However, she found that her brother was still taking care of her as before. She felt sad and touched, so secretly, the girl's mood had some strange changes. First, she found out that her brother wasn't related by blood, so she felt inexplicably excited and moved. Second, she knew that her brother hated the Jia family, so she was determined to stand up and stay with her brother for the rest of her life to make up for the Jia family's mistakes and heal the pain in her brother's heart. Oh. What a F asterisk King Beautiful plot. But Jia Dao was a man. Sun Lang beat his chest hard in his heart, And then he actually considered the possibility that Jia Sherdao was a woman dressed as a man. However, the big bodyguard, Jinli, had already explained everything. This guy was obviously a man. So why was he a man? Shouldn't this kind of plot be suitable for a girl? At this moment, Wei Zhongxian said nonchalantly, although Master Xiangdao isn't related by blood, in the eyes of the world, so Master, you should be careful. Sun Lang was stunned. And then he said angrily, "You're King laughing at me." Wei Zhongxian lowered his head submissively and said, "Of course not. Homosexual fetishes are an elegant thing that has existed since ancient times. It's the same for both the Chinese and the barbarians. It's very common for rich families to keep some male prostitutes for fun. This old servant found it strange before. Master, you're obviously from a prestigious family, but you're making a fuss about it and even abhor it," Sun Lang said angrily. "You King fart again, and I'll find 10 strong men to rape you." Wei Zhongxian, who was born in the palace and had been through hundreds of battles, revealed an inexplicable smile when he heard this. "Master, this old servant came from the palace. That is the dirtiest place in the world. What kind of battle have I not seen? You're terrible, being looked down upon by a eunuch on this matter again." Sun Lang felt very unconvinced. As a transmigrator who came from a modern world where there was an explosion of information, how could he lose to a eunuch? He was about to take out the 12 magic devices to let this old man see the world. Suddenly, he thought of something and turned his head to look into the distance. I'm back." Wei Zhongxian also stopped smiling. He asked, "Master, did you send a letter last night?" Sun Lang walked in the direction of the show Sword Garden, nodding as he walked. "Yes, we don't have a complete intelligence network, so we can only write to Ming Zhou and ask Sister Bao to investigate for us. She's meticulous and thoughtful, so she must be prepared. With the help of the Shuef family, she should be able to find something." Wei Zhongxian, who was experienced and astute, understood immediately. "Investigate the Ronghua mansion." "Yes," Sun Lang said lightly. "Jia Sherdao came to me because his father gave him news about me. Think about it. How many days has it been since Bai Yue died? How many days has it been since we reported to the imperial court? And how many days has it taken Jia Sherdao to come to Qinzhou?" Wei Zhongxian thought for a while and said in shock, "Duke Ning, you received the news very quickly." Sun Lang sneered. "Jia Su is a lazy and paranoid person. After Xiang Dao showed his talent on the battlefield a few years ago, he simply threw away his responsibilities and put on a low-key appearance. As a semi-reclusive rich man, the speed at which he received the news was too fast. Not only was it fast, but it was also accurate." Wei Zhongxian nodded slowly. "Yes, and his motive is thought-provoking." Sun Lang said calmly, "That's right. Since he knows I'm in the Bai Castle, he probably knows what I've done. With his intelligence, it's not difficult for him to figure out what I'm doing now and why I'm doing it. In other words, even if he doesn't know my real identity and still thinks I'm his nephew, he should know that his nephew has become a hot potato. It's very puzzling that he still gave the news to Jia Sherdao and asked him to come all the way here to find me." Sun Lang's face was full of sarcasm. "According to common sense, he should stay away from me and draw a clear line with me." Wei Zhongxian thought for a while. "But will it work?" Sun Lang raised his eyebrows. "What?" The old eunuch thought for a while and said with uncertainty, "Jia Ningguo is a smart man. He should know that even if he pretends not to see it, even if he announces that he's drawing a clear line with you, it won't work. Because of the battle at the Great Barren Mountain, with his intelligence, he should be able to see the Emperor's true colors." Sun Lang paused. "That makes sense, but it's just a guess. I don't know what this cheap uncle of mine is like. We'll see what he's thinking in the future." In the distance, the seraph broke through the clouds. A small black that slowly grew bigger as war machines flew through the air. Sun Lang quickened his pace and said, "At least, Sherdao isn't a pawn that he planted around us. Even if he is, he's no longer a spy." Wei Zhongxian was shocked. "You said those words on purpose." "Not really, but it seems to have had an unexpected effect." Sun Lang replied. After saying all those things, at least I feel a lot more relaxed. Sometimes it's not a good thing to keep everything in your heart. It's just that I didn't have a chance to talk before, Wei Zhongxian said indifferently. That's really a coincidence, a freak combination of factors. Yes, Sun Lang sighed. Whether it's Xiao Patao, Sister Bao, or Yin Luo, I'll never tell them everything in my life. As for you, I won't have a chance to tell them either. It's not that I don't want to tell them, but I don't think it's necessary. I used to think, damn it, after so long, didn't I take it all on myself? Since I took it all on, why should I find someone to talk to and let them sympathize with me? With such feelings, I didn't want to say anything to anyone. Finally, I took advantage of this opportunity to vent my feelings. Sun Lang smiled. Poor Jia Sherdao. He hit the muzzle of the gun. It's so tragic. Wei Zhongxian smiled. Master, you really don't pity your brother. Hey. You're F***king implying something again. Master, what are you talking about? Wise people have different opinions, benevolent people have different opinions, and perverted people have different opinions. This principle was taught to me by Master. Obviously, in terms of eloquence, Wei Zhongxian, who had cultivated in the palace for decades, was no doubt a match for Sun Lang. At this point, the little eunuch's hair had turned white after decades of vicissitudes. Now, only Sun Lang could make him pick himself up and bicker with him. The seraph that went to Mingzhou last night returned overnight and landed slowly. No matter what Jia Su wants to do, we'll deal with all changes by sticking to the status quo. Sun Lang said lightly. The main problem is Ningguo Mansion. Like I said before, if the imperial court wants to do something, Rongwa Mansion will definitely be the breakthrough. After all, there are many places in the world that can distract my attention. They came to the open space that was specially cleared for the seraph to take off and land. The enormously fire-divine weapon landed with a whoosh. In the roar of steel and the trembling sound of machinery, the gorgeous war machine completed its transformation. Although Wei Zhongxian had heard of the seraph before, he had never seen the landing of the seraph at such a close distance. He knew that this thing was extremely powerful. In the burning flame divine kingdom, which was founded on fire and had the best weapons in the world, the Seraph status was equivalent to the 7 luminaries' divine sword of the Empire. Its combat ability and destructive power were basically the same. However, seeing it transform and land with his own eyes still made him feel emotional. Human beings can make such shocking weapons. It's a bit arrogant of the imperial court to call a miraculous skill. Old Wei sighed. At least, the Leaf Fire Barbarian who is controlling the machine is not worth mentioning at all. However, wearing this giant armor, he can compete with the Sword Saint. Sun Lang smiled and said, Look at this thing. It's probably the same as how the Russians feel when they look at us martial artists. Wei Zhongxian pondered and said, During the war, Master has been full of praise for the firearms of the Leaf Fire Divine Kingdom. At first, we thought that it was because he was young and liked those strange things. But now, it seems that it's probably because of your background. Sun Lang nodded and said, Yes, there are no martial artists in our world. We don't even have those annoying flame runes or the divine power of the Leaf Fire Divine Kingdom. However, if the two worlds have a life-or-death war, our side will definitely win. Wei Zhongxian was a bit surprised. He had not seemed to believe it. Let's not talk about other things. Although the Russians have the best firearms in the world and have the magical power of fire, they are still a conservative, autistic, and theocratic country. In order for the church to maintain an overwhelming advantage, they prohibit the private development and modification of firearms. They also ritualize and mystify the manufacture and use of firearms. This kind of stupid behavior leads to the rigidity of research and production. They will definitely be beaten into idiots by the mature, modern warfare. Wei Zhongxian was a bit unconvinced. This was normal. He was not clear about the situation in Sun Lang's hometown. He could not imagine how powerful a world with nothing and no people could be. So he said, But we have the Imperial Army martial artists. Sun Lang smiled and said, The Imperial Army martial artists are not invincible. 2 years ago, when the war ended, the sky demon all over the world died instantly. They left behind a lot of secret bases and wealth, which led to all kinds of open and secret fights. Not only the civil organizations and great families of various countries participated, even the 5 major countries secretly reached out. I once happened to see a local conflict between Hoodoo and Leaf Fire in the north of the Empire. In the underground base of the Sky Demon, the elite hunters led by the Holy Knight of Leaf Fire fought fiercely with the Empire's internal guards. The exchange rate between the two sides was almost 1-to-1. Even the martial artists of the Imperial Army could not continuously resist the concentrated fire of various anti-infantry weapons and explosive weapons in a narrow environment. One moment of carelessness, and they would be finished. The martial artists of the Imperial Army are not invincible. He smiled and said, as for people like the 7 Luminary Sword Saint, their mobility and stealth are very high. They might really be able to avoid the targeting of military satellites and the endless long-range attacks. With the power of the Holy Sword, they might even be able to escape from the high-density firepower. They might even be able to charge into the city and go on a killing spree, but it's still not enough. Don't underestimate the ruthlessness and madness of humans. They are willing to exchange a large city with a population of more than 1 million for a Sword Saint. They're really going all out. A dozen nuclear bombs can vaporize both the people and the city. Wei Zhongxian's expression was a little stiff. He could not understand. Sun Lang turned around and smiled. Of course, I'm an exception. I'm not bragging, but I'm the fastest and the most evasive of the 7 Luminary Sword Saint. Even if a nuclear bomb really comes at me, I can just escape by burrowing into the ground. When the entire world is your home ground, it means that no one can make you stay. That's why the Emperor is so cautious. This time, it's not like the Great Bear Mountain. Even if he assembles a luxurious army far superior to the Great Barren Mountain to surround and kill me, I can still easily escape. Hearing this, Wei Zhongxian's expression finally became a little better. He smiled and said, that's a good thing. Sun Lang nodded. It is indeed a good thing. The stronger I am, the more cautious the Emperor will be, and the safer you all will be. But it seems that you still find it hard to understand what I'm saying. But it's fine. It's enough for me to know. The path that the Livefire Nation has taken has already been proven correct by another civilization. However, those old Russians are too selfish and too stupid. The key to changing the future still lies in my hands, Sun Lang said slowly. I thought about it last night. If we can't destroy this country and even this world, then let's have some fun. Wei Zhongxian's heart skipped a beat. Master, do you want to be the Emperor? Sun Lang rolled his eyes. Is it fun to be the Emperor? You have to deal with the civil and military officials all day, play tricks, scheme, be wary of this and that, and don't let your sons fight. But the Emperor can legitimately have 3,000 beauties. Wei Zhongxian seemed to understand his master's character very well, and also knew what he was most interested in. But if I'm the Prime Minister, I can F***CK the Emperor's wife as I wish. However, the old eunuch was still too stubborn to touch his master's bottom line. Are you stupid? Eunuchs will always be eunuchs. Ignorant. With that, Sun Lang pressed his hand on the blazing angel's armor. The body of the armor unfolded like a flower petal, revealing the inner cabin and the box within. Sun Lang nonchalantly took the box in his hand and waited. The meticulous perception of a peerless warrior told him that there was only a letter inside and nothing else. Thus, he relaxed and opened the letter in front of Wei Zhongxian and read it. Then his expression instantly turned gloomy. Chapter 729. This was the Empire's heartland, Jiangnan's Summer Province. Summer Province was a fertile land, a water town in the world. It had 2 rivers of water and water. To the north was Hanzhou, and to the east was the Guxia Sea. It was one of the Empire's wealthiest lands. Since there was money, there would be a large population. When there were more people, there would be more people. When there were more people, there would be more people. When there were more people, it was easier for there to be pretentious people. Therefore, Jiangnan had produced many famous scholars and aristocratic families since ancient times. Only the rich and beautiful Jiangnan had the heart to nurture culture. As the saying goes, a place nurtures a place's people. Nowadays, the aristocratic families of Jiangnan mostly passed down poetry and sword. They paid particular attention to the style of a gentleman. They were also quite respectful of romantic and beautiful literati. No matter what, they were elegant and calm. In comparison, the northern people who had been blown up by the wind were much more direct. When they encountered something, they would not make a decision. The empire recognized that Summer Province was the wealthiest of the southern provinces. Naturally, Summer Province had the most flourishing culture of Jiangnan, and also the empire's most elegant aristocratic families. The ancient aristocratic families that had been passed down for thousands of years lived in seclusion in the picturesque landscape gardens. The elegant and beautiful young ladies leaned against the embroidered window and caught a glimpse of them. All of these beautiful fantasies lingered in the misty rain under the small bridge and flowing water. It was the empire's most romantic fantasy of the south. Therefore, Summer Province actually carried a lot of people's southern complex. Summer Province was the wealthiest of the 9 provinces of the empire. Summer Province had the empire's most elegant aristocratic families. Summer Province was a single province with many counties under its jurisdiction. The number 1 gardens, the number 1 mountains, the number 1 talents, and the number 1 prosperity. Each county had its own advantages. The ancient aristocratic families and luxurious aristocratic families were scattered like stars in the sky. Together, they supported the empire's southern faction's prestige with their rich heritage. When it came to Summer Province, there was a lot to talk about. Among the many famous cities, there was one place that had to be mentioned, Jinling. Summer Province was the empire's wealthiest province. Summer Province had the empire's most elegant aristocratic families. And Jinling had the Summer Province's wealthiest aristocratic families. The 4 great clans of Jinling, Jia, Shi, Wang, and Shui, were all connected by blood. Together, they occupied Jinling, advancing and retreating together, taking care of each other. They practically controlled the entire Jinling prefecture, and their industries radiated to the entire summer region. They were involved in textile, food, transportation, and many other fields, and their financial power was extremely strong. The EC was short of a white jade bed, so the Dragon King invited the king of Jinling to come here. The king of Jinling said that there was a big snow in a bountiful year, and the pearls were as precious as earth and gold. Although the ballad that was sung in Jinling was somewhat exaggerated, it still reflected the illustrious financial resources of the 4 great families. However, just like how all living things have their own destiny, everything has its ups and downs. Although the 4 great clans of Jinling were still flourishing like fresh flowers, they had already begun to show signs of exhaustion. The problem lay with the head of the 4 great clans, the Jia clan. War was a monster with extremely strong destructive power. In front of it, the so-called eternal mountains and rivers, the so-called 1,000-year-old aristocratic families, were all like fortresses made of sand, fragile and not worth mentioning. The Great War of Tianyuan had changed too many things. It ignited the flames of war in the empire that had been peaceful for a long time, and it allowed the elegant nobles to step onto the battlefield. On the battlefield, swords and sabers had no eyes, and all living things were equal. The Jia clan had lost almost all of their male descendants in this war, but there was always a way out. The only remaining descendant had gone missing for 3 years and stepped onto the stage of the empire in one fell swoop. Furthermore, he had created a legendary battle result. With his own strength, he had forcefully dragged out the declining family. Those few years were the most glorious period in the history of the Jia clan, because everyone knew that the legitimate son of the Jia clan, who was only in his 20s, could even enter the martial arts hall and establish a pavilion before the age of 30, becoming the youngest prime minister of the empire in history. This was almost a nail in the nail of 50 years of prosperity. However, fate played a big joke on them again. This peerlessly talented marshal actually died silently in the Battle of the Great Desolate Mountain. Overnight, the Jia clan had fallen from the highest position. The group of orphans and widows had lost the pillar of the clan and the last male descendant of the clan. In other words, the bloodline of the Rongguo residents was going to end. Although the Ningguo residents still had descendants, the impact of the marshal's death was too great. Moreover, what was even more strange was that the imperial court's attitude after the war was extremely cold and even strange, even though he had such an outstanding reputation when he was alive. People couldn't help but mutter in their hearts, guessing the real reason for the marshal's death. Even the Jia clan situation became more and more unfavorable. Moreover, even if there was no inside story involving the emperor, the Rongguo residents couldn't hold on for too long. No matter how powerful that old and virtuous Shi Laojun was, how many years could she live? After the death of the old lady, how could those widows and little girls hold up the lintel of the Duke residence? Human nature was greedy. Thinking of this, countless hyenas had their eyes on the unstable Rongguo residents. In the past 2 years, the rumors and undercurrents had become more and more intense. However, these despicable, ambitious schemers and greedy conspirators didn't know that the Jia clan situation was much worse than imagined. This was no longer a matter of the decline of the clan. It was simply a matter of life and death. Jinling City, Ningguo residence. After passing through the ancient and rustic garden and over the mottled high walls and buildings, a middle-aged man was writing in the study room. He was dressed like a rich man. His hat was casually placed on the side, and he was writing in front of the desk. He was a good-looking middle-aged man. His beard was neatly trimmed, and his eyes were gentle like jade. He looked harmless, without any sense of sharpness or arrogance. However, he was the owner of the Ningguo residence. He had inherited the title of the Duke residence and was one of the top nobles in the country, if only in terms of title. He was writing casually, as if he was not writing but thinking. At this moment, a cool breeze blew, and there was a rustling sound outside. It was the sound of the branches and leaves rubbing against each other. Even though the branches were rooted to the ground and were as immovable as a mountain, they would still sway when the breeze blew. His heart skipped a beat, and he wrote a line of words with a brush. The tree wants to be still, but the wind won't stop. Jiasu put down the brush and looked at the words on the paper. He said slowly, "That little bastard is here?" A calm and steady answer came from outside the door. "Master." The young master rode a fast horse without rest and rushed to the Bai family fort in the West River of Qin province. According to master's orders, the people in charge of escorting him did not dare to get close. However, they saw the young master enter the Bai family fort along the mountain road and sent a pigeon to report. Jiasu nodded and said, "I understand." There was no response from outside. Jiasu frowned, and his expression was cold. The tree wanted to be quiet, but the wind would not stop. This was the current situation of the Jia residents. There is a saying in the martial arts world that one could not control oneself in the martial arts world. This saying was applicable everywhere. Sometimes, things would not change because of one's thoughts. One would have to be controlled by it. "My good nephew," Lin Feng said. He said in a low voice, "You have done such a big thing that we can't rest in peace. Moreover, it happened at such a delicate time. Did you expect this?" A delicate time. Yes, the situation was delicate. It had been 2 years since the war. The Imperium had calmed down from the ecstasy of victory and started to rebuild and adjust after the war. It meant that the conflict between the North and the South, the debate in the court, the redistribution of interests, the support of the civil officials, and the suppression of the military power were all things that were about to happen. The conflict between the North and the South was the first one to be affected. Everybody knew that regional conflicts were the bad habits of human beings. Since the unification of the Imperium, the conflict between the North and the South had been set. The Northerners laughed at the Southerners for their weakness, and the Southerners mocked the Northerners for their vulgarity. The conflict between the different factions in the court was very exciting. Although the empire valued martial arts and despised literature, and due to various environmental factors, the North's martial chi was much stronger than the South's. However, the South's literary style was at its peak. The two sides clashed, and the comparison of power between the two sides was basically balanced, maintaining a balance. But this was something that happened decades ago. Because of the war, the Great Tianyuan War changed too many things. Powerful foreign enemies and the crisis of extinction made the whole country constantly adjust itself in the war. All social resources and public opinion were used to serve the victory, and the fragile balance of power between the North and the South was naturally broken. When the power of the generals became stronger, it meant that the pie of the civil officials was constantly shrinking. Because the country needed brave generals to charge and break through the enemy lines, it needed wise generals to devise strategies, and it needed fierce generals who could CK your mother if they didn't agree with you. All boasting and armchair strategizing would tire the army to death. In the past few decades, countless civil officials who only knew how to sell their mouths had died. In this regard, the fierce and violent Northerners had a natural advantage. There were more and more Northerners with great power, and naturally, the survival space of the Southern faction was squeezed. This was normal. After all, the North worshipped martial arts and despised literature, while the South wanted to pass on poetry and sword. This involved the problem of efficiency and specialization. After all, a human's energy was limited. If you wanted to develop your morals, intelligence, physique, and beauty in all aspects, people would King crazily study math, physics, and chemistry. If the policy changed and the exams were to focus on math, physics, and chemistry, wouldn't you be stupid? The harsh environment of war caused the Southerners to lament the decline of literature, but they could only pinch their noses and adapt. Fortunately, although the overall quality of this education system was not as good as that of the North, which focused on martial arts, it was able to cultivate top-notch geniuses and generals. After all, there were always people with extraordinary talent in this world. Even if they were to cultivate both literature and martial arts, they could still be proficient in everything and achieve great success. Among the widely recognized masters of the art of war, the Southerners made up the majority. This was because they had the advantage of being literate. Not only were they highly skilled in martial arts, they were also scholars with extraordinary literary talent. They had read a lot about the art of war and were familiar with both ancient and modern battles. Only then could they summarize the lost knowledge of the past and integrate it into their own. Generally speaking, the top Southerner generals in the military were usually masters of one of the four schools of the military. Of course, there were exceptions, such as Grand Marshal Jia. He said he belonged to the B school of the military. Everyone felt that this name was very appropriate. Clearly, he was the most eye-catching person among the Southerners. In short, because of the war, the flourishing literary culture of the South had declined. The days of the civil officials also became worse by the day. Even the tradition of the Jiang and aristocratic families passing down poetry and sword to their families was obviously affected. After enduring such bitter days for who knew how long, they finally saw a glimmer of hope. Because the war was won, since the external enemies had been eliminated, the emperor would not allow such a large amount of power to remain in the hands of the martial people. It was imperative to take back power and weaken it. Since he wanted to weaken the power of the military officials, according to the emperor's intentions, he had to support a new bureaucratic group to fight on the arena. Past history and events had already proven that regardless of whether it was the group of relatives or the group of eunuchs, they were not enough in front of the violent and wild military officials. These muscular murderers not only had violent tempers, but in recent years, a certain soul figure had brought out too many bad habits. In essence, the relatives and eunuchs who relied on the power of the tiger could not suppress them. In order to balance the military officials, it was still the civil officials. Since the emperor wanted to support the civil officials, this meant that the situation of the North being strong and the South being weak was about to be reversed. The flourishing civil fire in the South was about to burn fiercely. The famous southern families passing down poetry and sword would also welcome a golden opportunity to rise. Not long after the war ended, the scheming and astute Southerners saw this clearly. 2 years had passed. The horses were let out in the South Mountains. The weapons were put into storage. The soldiers returned home in glory, and the people were resting and building up strength. After experiencing the initial ecstasy after the war, the empire had gradually calmed down. The emperor was strategizing, and the court was about to move to the next stage of work. The southern provinces had already begun to brew restless power. The interactions between the aristocratic families had become more frequent, and the number of marriages between the families had also increased. Within 5 years at the latest, the imperial court would redistribute the cake, and no one wanted to miss this opportunity. A storm was brewing, and the wise people had already smelled the signs of change. Change. Whenever Jia Su thought of this word, he felt a headache. The situation in the court had changed. The emperor was the way of balance. The decline of the civil and military forces was not something too strange. The rise of the southern faction and the emperor's support of the civil officials was good news for the aristocratic families of Jiangnan. However, the weak Jia family and the four families no longer had the right to participate in this competition. In order to prevent the emperor's suspicion, they could not even drink a mouthful of soup. They could only be content with a corner of the country. All of this was because of his nephew. There were too many mysteries surrounding the battle of the Great Desolate Mountain, and the attitude of the imperial court after the battle was even more chilling. While Jia Su didn't know the details, he could still guess many things. Clearly, his nephew's death wasn't as simple as it seemed. It might even involve some terrifying secret. Jia Su saw through everything but did not want to expose it. He also did not want to avenge his nephew. After all, it was only his nephew. Furthermore, there was no way to avenge his nephew. If he was not careful, the entire family would be doomed. It was precisely because of this that he extinguished the idea of returning to the mountain. He obediently stayed at home and slacked off. He closed his door and withdrew from selfless relationships. Men and women married, but did not marry into noble families. He knew that because of his nephew, the Jia family was most likely suspected by the emperor. However, he could not make things too ugly. Thus, he reluctantly maintained his old appearance. Thus, no matter what, the Jia family could only remain as it was. They could only keep a low profile and not be remembered or remembered by the emperor. Then it would depend on their own luck. Even when his son went to resign and became a monk, he only acted out a few times on the surface. In reality, he did not care much. Who knew that although the tree wished for peace, the wind would not stop. Sometimes, even if you did not look for trouble, trouble would still come to you. And this time, the matter was indeed a little bigger. His nephew was actually still alive. After not seeing him for 2 years, he suddenly jumped out and did something big. Thinking of the mysterious letter and combining it with the various information he had gathered through his own channels, the amount of information in the letter made him feel a toothache. This little brat wanted a rebel. Jia Su was a wise man. Even if the information was incomplete, he could still see some clues. Now, it seemed that not only was his nephew alive and kicking, but he was also harboring malicious intentions. The most interesting thing was that he did not know if he had something on the imperial court or something else, but he actually had the imperial court under his control. As for the inside story and what had happened in the Battle of the Great Barren Mountain, Jia Su did not know. But now, the grim situation was in front of him. The legitimate son of the Rongwa residents, Marshal Jia, had not only survived the Battle of the Great Barren Mountain, but also made it clear that he wanted to fight with the imperial court. He was born in the Rongwa residence and had a natural blood relationship with the Jia family. The law could implicate him, and the punishment could lead to the execution of the entire family. Thus, the Jia family had automatically been tied to his war chariot. A person sitting at home, a pot falling from the sky. Thinking of this, Jia Su sighed again. For a moment, he was so angry that his teeth itched. But no matter how angry he was, he could not do anything to his nephew. He could not just run a Qin province and give him 2 slaps, right? I can't hit him. Even if I see him, I can't hit him. This little bastard even dared to rebel against the emperor. I'm sure he doesn't care about seniority. If I use my seniority to slap him, he might just kick me in the face. Jia Su's thoughts were running wild. Even the most shrewd and wise man would have mixed thoughts when faced with such a delicate situation. Fortunately, Xiang Dao had arrived safely. He had traveled to Qin province and Ming province, and had disgraced the imperial court twice. Yet, the emperor could not do anything to him. He must have something to rely on, which was why the imperial court did not dare to act rashly. Perhaps the imperial court would really open up the situation. Even if the worst happened, he would save Xiang Dao on account of their brotherhood. Even if they had to go to the ends of the earth, with him and his brother around, the Jia family would still have descendants. Jia Su looked at the words on the paper and gradually fell into a daze. Things had come to this. Things had come to this. Jia Su pondered silently. He is my nephew, the legitimate son of the Rongwa residents. No matter what, we can't get rid of him. The emperor's family has always killed wrongly and never let him go. Even if we put righteousness before family and think of a way to deal with that little brat and present him to the emperor, we can't dispel the emperor's suspicion because we know too much. Moreover, with the Jia family's foundation and power now, I'm afraid they can't do anything to my nephew. There's so many people in the Dahuang mountain, but they can't do anything to him. In other words, there's no way out. No matter what, the emperor will not let the Jia family go. If that's the case, Jia Su's gaze gradually turned cold. At this moment, panicked footsteps came from outside the door. Jia Su was jolted awake from his chaotic thoughts and raised his head. Someone was running over in a panic and panting as he shouted, "First old master! First master! Old madam is..." Jia Su was stunned. At the same time, in the Bai castle, Sun Lang handed the letter to the confused Jia Sherdao. "Grandmother, old madam sure is sick." His expression was extremely gloomy. Chapter 730. Jia Sherdao was shocked. He quickly snatched the letter from Sun Lang's hands and read it a few times. Then, he said anxiously, "She's not feeling well. She has some minor ailments, but aristocratic families were connected by blood and established by rules. Aristocratic families valued etiquette and filial piety. Filial piety was one of the core principles of ethics. Filial piety was one of the most important things in aristocratic families. Matriarchshire was the most senior person in the Jia family. She was an old lady that even the four great families had to respect. Although Jia Sherdao was not a very dignified young man, he did not dare to neglect filial piety. Even though the letter only said that the matriarch was not feeling well, he did not dare to ignore it. Therefore, he said without hesitation, "We have to go back." Halfway through his sentence, he shut his mouth. Because things were different now. The person in front of him wasn't his elder brother or the grandson of the old madam. He didn't have the grace to give birth to him and didn't have the virtue of raising him. He didn't have any sense of belonging to Rongwa Manor, so naturally, he wouldn't have much intention to get close to the old madam. After all, the person who was raised and spoiled by the matriarch was not him. Thinking of this, Jia Sherdao said gloomily, "I have to go back and take a look." Sun Lang's face was gloomy. Now that he had used by Yu Wei's incident to force the imperial court into a corner, he had used his own strength and deterrence to force the imperial court into not daring to use force. He had also used the emperor's schemes and selfishness to force the imperial court to keep quiet. The gold radiant sword spirit's possession of Bai Yue was an earth-shattering event. Being possessed by one's own imperial army would obviously make the great generals tremble in fear. Now, that Sun Lang was occupying the Bai clan fort, and there were many witnesses to testify for him. Coupled with his status and reputation, he naturally had the right to explain this matter. As long as he stepped forward to explain himself, the half-truth and half-lies would be accurately pinned on the emperor's head. This kind of thing would obviously cause people's hearts to waver and the court to be shaken. But at this moment, he did not say a word and kept his silence. On one hand, he instigated his minions to fan the flames in the court and ordered the Bai family to report the death of Bai Yue. On the other hand, he sat on the fishing platform and made a fortune in silence. It was obvious that he was waiting for the right price to sell. After firmly seizing the initiative, he would deal with all changes by remaining unchanged. Thus, after the impasse in Ming province, the imperial court was once more forced to the negotiating table, and the situation was even worse, because the situation this time was even more serious. The imperial army was the foundation of the imperial court, and the officials in charge of the imperial army were the backbone of the imperial court. Each of them had their own background and power, and they formed a power that encompassed the entire realm. These people were the pillars of the imperial court, and the emperor relied on them to govern the realm. The emperor spent most of his career scheming against them, and the struggle between sovereign power and subject power had always been the unchanging theme of the imperial court. The so-called art of the imperial court was balance. The emperor was high above, and he used his power and promises to divide his subjects and cause them to fight amongst themselves. This was because only by fighting amongst themselves could the emperor's position be as stable as Mount Tai. However, the scale had to be carefully controlled, because if the fighting went too far, it would often lead to internal friction and disaster, causing the imperial court to lose balance. Only balance was the way to long-term stability. But this time it was different. No matter how much internal strife they usually had, no matter how many slogans they shouted about loyalty to the emperor and patriotism, once these loyal subjects knew that the emperor was manipulating the imperial army's possession, and that the famous and prestigious old madam Bai had become a sacrifice, they would definitely be furious and unite like never before. What a joke. A wise emperor raised a strong country, but you king raised us like pigs. The emperor was immoral, and the emperor was immoral. This kind of mistake was enough for the subjects to righteously throw the emperor off the dragon throne, because this matter had crossed everyone's bottom line. That was why the emperor was controlled and did not dare to act rashly. However, with the emperor's personality, he would definitely not be willing to be controlled. Even if he temporarily backed down, he must have other plans. Now that the Bai family's matter had become a fact, if he wanted to break the situation and regain the initiative, he had to do it somewhere else. This was something that would definitely happen. Therefore, when Sun Lang saw Jia Sherdao, he realized that the Jiao mansion was a very good breakthrough point. Now, the news of old Madame Shi's illness had immediately spread. Was this a coincidence or a conspiracy? He pondered for a moment and asked Jia Sherdao, "Don't worry. Did your father say anything before?" Jia Sherdao shook his head blankly. "No. Although I've been cultivating in the mountains, I haven't cut off my ties with the mortal world. For example, I send people to the Rongwa mansion every now and then." With that, he glanced at Sun Lang and sighed helplessly in his heart. Although he was nominally a monk, how could he let go of the Rongwa mansion and the old and young left by his elder brother? Therefore, he had been worrying about the Jiao mansion for the past 2 years. However, he was back, but he was no longer the same person. Sun Lang saw the change in Jia Sherdao's expression. His heart moved, but he didn't say anything. He just snorted and continued, "I sent a letter to Mingzhou before, but Xue Baochai didn't tell me about this. Last night, I sent a letter overnight and received this news. This means that old Madame Shi has been ill for the past 2 days." His eyes turned cold. He looked at Jia Sherdao and said, "Tell me, is this a coincidence or a conspiracy?" If it was a coincidence, then old Madame Shi was ill. If it was on purpose, then the old lady might have heard similar rumors and news, so she pretended to be ill to force her grandson to show up. After all, the old lady still didn't know the truth. She didn't know that her grandson had died 8 years ago. She thought that the person who was causing trouble in Qin and Mingzhou was her grandson. It was not strange that she pretended to be ill to coax her grandson to come home. If it was just these two, they would be fine. If it was a conspiracy, did they really do something to the Jiao mansion? Did they want to use this method to force me to go back and transfer me away from the Bai castle, so that they could take the opportunity to solve the problem of Bai Yue? Wei Zhongxian said calmly. Master, you have to stay in Sichuan. Don't act rashly. Jia Sherdao glared at the old eunuch. He knew that his cousin wasn't his real cousin, but he was still dissatisfied when he heard such slanderous words. However, he looked at Sun Lang again and saw that his brother's expression was changing. Obviously, he was weighing the pros and cons in his heart. This made his heart ache. Jia Sherdao took a deep breath and tried to calm himself down. I'll write a letter to my father first, and then I'll go back tonight to see what's going on, Sun Lang sneered. It's useless. Since this has already happened, whether it's a coincidence or intentional, the Emperor won't let go of this opportunity. Even if it wasn't arranged by him, he will still take advantage of it. So, since this has already happened, then we should prepare to deal with it. Hearing this, Jia Sherdao calmed down a little. A glimmer of hope rose in his heart. He whispered, Are you going back? Sun Lang paced 2 steps and said coldly, If I go back, then I'll be playing right into the Emperor's hands. After I leave Sichuan, there will be many ways for them to come in and cause trouble. Now, Bai Yue is a sore point for the Emperor, and it's a good card that we must hold in our hands. Jia Sherdao was disappointed. If that's the case, I can't not go. Sun Lang said coldly. If I continue to stay in the Bai Castle and ignore the Rongwa Mansion, those idiots will definitely not let go of this opportunity to accuse me of being unfilial. Ha! Unfilial, they will definitely do that. After all, I don't want to tell them about my background. Even now, many people still think that I'm the grandson of the Rongwa Mansion. Jia Sherdao was frightened. Obviously, the Rongwa Mansion had become a stumbling block for Sun Lang, and he actually had nothing to do with the Jia Mansion. Anyone would be unhappy if they were dragged into this mess for no reason. The key question was, what would he do if he felt unhappy? And the most important question is, at this point, Sun Lang's tone was a bit helpless, but became gentle. Although Sister Bao didn't rush me in the letter, she was anxious. Although she comforted me in her heart and said that she would continue to send envoys to investigate, she must be very anxious. Under such circumstances, if I still don't go back, even if they don't say anything, I'm afraid they will feel very uncomfortable. Jia Sherdao looked at his brother in a daze. He didn't expect Sun Lang to say something like this. So, for the sake of the two of them, I can't ignore this matter and be indifferent. Sun Lang said lightly. After all, there are not many people in this world who are sincere to me. I can't let them down. After all, in their hearts, I'm still the second Master Bao of the Rongwa Mansion. Hearing this, Jia Sherdao's heart ached. He choked and said, Sun Lang glared at him. I love my wife. Why are you so touched? Jia Sherdao hurriedly rubbed his eyes and said calmly, Then when should we leave? Wei Zhongxian said, Master, please think twice. Jia Sherdao was very dissatisfied. This eunuch was so long-winded. Sun Lang waved his hand. Indeed, we can't rush. If I go directly, won't I be falling into the Emperor's trap? Does he want to take back the initiative with this matter? In his dreams, saying this, he thought for a moment and said firmly, Damn it, let's do it. If the capital wants to watch a show, then I'll scare the Emperor. He said to Jia Sherdao first, Do you have a way to contact your father? Hearing this, Jia Sherdao said, Yes, the Jia family's business is all over the world. They also have shops in Qinzhou. These shops are also responsible for collecting information. After all, the first thing to do is to be well informed. I'll go find someone now. Sun Lang nodded. As soon as possible, ask your father what happened to his aunt. Add a few more sentences in the letter. Just say that his eldest nephew asked him for a plan. That's all. He'll understand. Jia Su was a smart man, and smart people usually had keen insight into the situation. The current situation was that no matter the truth or the outcome, the Jia family was completely on the opposite side of the royal family. Being a coward meant death. F***CK, there was still a chance of survival if they rebelled. With Jia Su's wisdom in grasping the situation and his ruthlessness, he would understand. Humph, I've been pretending to be Jia for 6 years. Everyone in the world treats me as him, and you treat me as him. Since you treat me as him, you have to pay me something. Jia Sherdao thought for a while and nodded in agreement. He hesitated for a while and said softly, "Brother, it's still too slow to use this method to send messages. If you can send messages between Mingzhou and Qinzhou in one night, you might be able to contact my father quickly if you use the same method." "No," Sun Lang said. Jia Sherdao was stunned at first, and then he heard his brother say lightly, "I don't know the way." Yes, he didn't know the way. In the past 6 years, he had never stepped into the summer state, nor had he returned home. In the past 6 years, he had only sent letters back home. In the face of Madame Dowager's longing, he had only used the excuse that the war was urgent, and he had inevitably used words like "every man is responsible for the rise and fall of the world" to show off. After all, he didn't want to go back because it wasn't his home. Moreover, the two parties could communicate, and with the help of the imperial court, even if there were some mistakes, it could be dealt with. However, if he really went back to the summer state and the Rongba mansion, his relatives would probably be exposed within a couple of hours. After all, he was just an ordinary person from Earth, not young Master Jia who grew up in a big family. Some things were engraved in his bones. They were two completely different people. In front of those relatives who had watched him grow up, it wouldn't take long for him to be completely exposed. Therefore, in the past 6 years, he hadn't gone back even once. Therefore, he didn't know the way, didn't know how to get to the summer state, didn't know how to get to Jinling, and didn't know which way the door of the Rongba mansion opened. The Seraph was able to fly all the way to Mingzhou with his mind control and preset because he knew the general direction, and Yin Luo and Courier were there to take care of him. However, the Rongba mansion wasn't like this. At this moment, Wei Zhongxian suddenly said, "If Master must go, you can personally drive the fire-leaving machine to the summer state to take a look. It won't take much time to go back and forth." Then he added, "If you don't know the way, you can bring young Master Sherdao along." Sun Lang considered the distance between the Qin state and the summer state for a moment and nodded. "It's not impossible, but even though the time it takes to go back and forth is short, there will still be gaps in time, which will give the enemy an opportunity to take advantage of. We have to be on guard against this. In the end, we still lack someone who can shoulder the responsibility." He thought for a moment. "I'll have to trouble Chao Patao to make the trip. I'll have the Seraph go back and bring Chao Patao here, and ask her to take charge here. Mingzhou has the help of Qi Guanyin and Lu Shouyan, and there are also 2 Seraphs, so there shouldn't be too much trouble. The battle line has been stretched too far." At this moment, Wei Zhongxian played the role of a doghead strategist. He lowered his head and said submissively, "General Zhao is the general of the Song state, and the Mingzhou state is Master's most important place. With General Zhao overseeing the Mingzhou state, you can link up with the power of the Song state when necessary. This old servant thinks that General Zhao can't be easily moved." Sun Lang frowned and said, "But the Qin state..." Wei Zhongxian smiled and said, "Now that Master is gone, the Qin state is indeed empty. If the enemy wants to take advantage of the situation, they can only do 2 things. The first is to kill people, and the second is to buy people's hearts. The first is to completely fall out with Master, so the possibility is lower. The second is to take time, and the possibility of success is not high." Sun Lang frowned and said, "Even so, we can't just leave you here." Wei Zhongxian pursed his lips and smiled. "Master is benevolent and righteous. What this old servant means is that you don't have to worry too much. If you really don't feel at ease, just find someone to help you." Sun Lang's expression changed slightly. "You mean Wang Wuan?" Wei Zhongxian nodded and said, "That's right. General Wang is the general of our state. He's very good at martial arts, and he's very good at commanding troops. If he's willing to stay in the Bai Castle for a few days and take a look at the Bai Castle, he'll definitely be able to intimidate the enemy." Jia Sherdao listened quietly and snorted in his heart. This old eunuch was really naive. Wang Wuan and his brother were not friends, and he used to hide from his brother for some reason. Now that his brother had settled down in the Qin state, it would be fine if he didn't come looking for trouble, but why would he want to get involved in this mess? If he came to the Bai Castle, it would be a blatant declaration to the imperial court that he had sided with his brother. Even if Wang Wuan had nothing better to do, he wouldn't do something so stupid. As he was thinking this, he suddenly heard Sun Lang say, "Good idea, then let Wang Wuan do it." Jia Shidao was shocked when he heard this. What was wrong with his brother? He quickly said, "Brother, please think twice. General Wang isn't like General Zhao. He's not friends with you, so he won't come. Even if he comes, he won't do anything. What's more, if he follows the imperial court's orders, what will happen? All in all, General Wang can't be trusted." Sun Lang flicked Jia Shidao's forehead and said, "My stupid Daodu, I haven't seen you for 2 years. How did you become so stupid? If Wang Wuan can slack off, I can kill his whole family." Jia Shidao was shocked. Was that even possible? However, in the next moment he was stunned. Only then did he realize what he had just said and what his elder brother had done. Especially the phrase, "I'm a stupid Odu," and so on. He had heard it many times before. Whenever he said something wrong or did something stupid, his elder brother would always say this kind of thing. When he asked him what Dowda meant, he would say it was his little brother, and then he would add, "My stupid Dowdu," and so on, which meant, "Ouch, you stupid little brother." That was probably it. It had been a long time since he was said that, and he was flicked on the forehead. He silently raised his hand and covered his forehead, looking a little dazed. He didn't know if he was reminiscing or reminiscing. Sun Lang kicked him and said, "Are you King Gay?" Wei Zhongxian watched all of this from his side. Whether it was Jia Shidao blurting out "brother," Sun Lang subconsciously flicked him on the forehead, or the phrase "stupid Dado," both parties naturally did and said it. That was pretty good. A faint smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. Then it settled. "I'll go find Wang Wuan first and give him a list. Before I come back, if anyone on the list is injured, I'll let his people pay for it with their lives. If Wang Ermatzi wants to slack off, he'll have to see if I agree." After kicking Jia Shidao, Sun Lang said loudly as if he was hiding something, "Then we'll go to Xiazhou to investigate the situation and see your father. We'll come back after that." Jia Shidao whispered, "Aren't you going to see Madame Dowager? Don't talk nonsense." Chapter 731. Although he did not want to be involved with Sun Lang, Wang Wuan still came. However, he had a sour expression on his face and wished he could tear Sun Lang apart and eat him. His expression was unfriendly as he shouted, "Jia, if you continue to push your luck, don't blame me for turning hostile." Sun Lang said indifferently, "I can't be in 2 places at once. This is the only time." General Wang said coldly, "What do you want to do now?" Sun Lang looked at him indifferently. "Shui Baochai sent a letter saying that old matriarch Shi is unwell. What do you think I should do?" Wang Wuan was shocked when he heard this. He was a wise general. Although he had been in seclusion these days, he could see everything clearly. Sun Lang's plan, the court's silence, all these signs showed that Sun Lang's words that day were not empty words. The so-called possession of the imperial army was probably not a groundless rumor. Now that Sun Lang was sitting firmly in the fishing boat, the court was bound to be in a terrible fix. At this moment, the old matriarch of the Jia family was ill. Whoever could benefit from it would be the biggest suspect. His expression changed slightly, and he said in a low voice, "You mean Sun Lang did not take the opportunity to frame the emperor?" After all, the matter had not been settled yet. He had no need to frame or lie about this matter. "I'm not sure yet, so I have to go back and take a look." Wang Wuan was silent. Sun Lang looked at him. "Even if this matter is true, even if everything is true, you will continue to be a fence-sitter and refuse to stand on my side? Even if this matter is true." Wang Wuan's gaze was like lightning as he stared at Sun Lang. He laughed coldly. "Even if this matter is true, what you plan to do is no better than what His Majesty will do. I'm a citizen of the Empire and a general of the court. Do you think I will follow you and destroy this country?" Sun Lang scoffed. "In other words, if I don't destroy this country, you'll help me?" General Wang said, "There are no ifs, at least not now. Even if what you said is true, it can't cover up your own bad motives. Now, you are competing with His Majesty to see who will destroy this country first. Sun Lang smiled. Is that so? That depends on how you define the word ruined. He didn't say anything more and handed Wang Wuan a piece of paper. The people on the list must be kept alive. Bring your men and keep an eye on them. If you want to see my sincerity, you have to show your sincerity first. Since you're here, don't let any random people come in and cause trouble. Stop them for me. He added, you're a loyal official, so you definitely won't be willing to mix with a traitor like me. It's okay, I'll give you face. You'll be responsible for stopping the people who sneak in. You don't have to kill them. You can let them go and show your loyalty to the people behind them and form a good relationship with them. I won't pursue the matter after this, and I won't pursue and kill them. The premise is that they don't hurt my men. Wang Wuan snorted coldly. Sun Lang said calmly, Wang or Matsi, you can't see through me, and I can't see through you. You said that I will destroy the empire. To be honest, I can't give you a clear answer now, but Sun Lang looked at the sky, and the power of the gold elemental surged around him. He felt the connection between himself and the gold elemental sacred sword. Even if he didn't go through the oath ceremony of the sacred sword, the new gold elemental sacred sword was like his contract spirit of the imperial army. He could control it as he wished, because there was an old story frozen in the sword or release. Some things had indeed changed. At least now, his mind was empty, and he had let go of the burden of the great barren mountain. Although there were still scars in his heart, and there was still a knot in his heart that hadn't been untied. Everything was slowly getting better. So he lowered his head and said with a smile, one day, I'll give you a clear answer. I hope you'll be the same at that time. Wang Wuan was stunned. Sun Lang didn't wait for his answer. Instead, he walked away, and his voice sounded in the night sky. Jia Sherdao, where the hell are you? Are you busy with Heroine Huang? A moment later, Jia Sherdao's voice sounded, and there was a bit of dissatisfaction in his panic. I'm packing up. And who is Heroine Huang? She's one of the 3 giants of classical wuxia. Sun Lang replied, but that's not the point. We have to go, and we have to come back quickly. Jia Sherdao ran out of the darkness and saw Wang Wuan from afar. He bowed deeply. He wasn't like Sun Lang. He had to be respectful to General Wang in terms of seniority, official position, and military achievements. Plus, his brother must have threatened to kill Wang Wuan's whole family before, which made Jia Sherdao, who still had integrity, feel embarrassed. His brother's way of doing things wasn't right. Wang Wuan nodded back. In fact, he preferred Jia Sherdao, who was relatively honest, among the 2 brothers of the Jia family. At least he could see through this young man. He watched the 2 brothers disappear in the night wind. Wei Zhongxin's voice came from behind him. General, it's cold at night. Let's go in and rest. Wang Wuan turned around and looked at Wei Zhongxian, who used to call the wind and rain in the imperial court. He said slowly, Mr. Wei, he wanted to ask some questions, but looking at Wei Zhongxian's face, he didn't know why he couldn't ask. He wanted to know why 2 years had already passed. Things had remained the same, but people had changed. The famous young commander had already become a cold avenger, but there were still people waiting and following him without complaint, just like in the past. Could it be that they couldn't see the change in that person? Could it be that they couldn't see that he was no longer the him of the past? Could it be that if he wanted to overthrow this country and destroy the achievements that everyone had made with their blood and lives, they would still follow him willingly? But looking at Wei Zhongxian, he didn't know why he couldn't ask the question in his heart. But just because he couldn't ask, it didn't mean that Wei Zhongxian couldn't see it. The old man put his hands in his sleeves and hunched his body. He seemed to be an old man who was afraid of the cold. Although with his superb skills, he wouldn't feel cold even if he stood naked in the cold winter snow. He was just used to it. Because everyone had their own identity, he had to remember his identity in past. If he did something bad and his hands were dirty, he had to shrink back. Just like how he firmly remembered another person's identity and remembered his things. He smiled slightly. Master is eloquent. When he laughs and scolds, he often says some thought-provoking words. Some are vulgar, some are elegant, but in the end, they all hide a reason. When he scolded someone, he once said that a dog can't change its habit of eating shit. When it comes to people, it's easy to change mountains and rivers, but hard to change one's nature. Wang Wuan furrowed his brows. He didn't understand. Wei Zhongxin smiled. Some people won't change. The things in their bones won't change. Real people won't be affected by external things. You will see it one day. Wang Wuan's expression changed slightly. You mean, Wei Zhongxian didn't continue. He just looked at the cold night sky. His sharp eyes pierced through the night and looked at a light rising from the darkness. The light flashed and disappeared, sweeping through the night sky at an extremely fast speed. This old eunuch had remembered his identity all his life. He knew that he was a bastard and that he was a person. He knew that there was only one person in the world who completely treated him as a person, even if he didn't deserve to be a person. Because of this, he had some expectations. That pair of narrowed, old eyes seemed to flash with bright colors. Wei Zhongxian said softly, "We all believe, so we are all waiting. We will see it again one day." At this moment, the seraph had taken off from the darkness and was flying into the distance. Jia Shidao was screaming. He was obviously very excited. Sun Lang thought that this stupid Odu should be excited because he was participating in history, participating in a very creative flight. Just as the Wright brothers on Earth received the honor of being the inventors of the airplane because they completed the first practical man flight, at this moment, in the sky of the Empire, there was another pair of brothers who were performing an epic-making feat of flight. History would remember this day. While remembering Sun Lang, it would also remember Jia Shidao and the important role he played at this moment. He had become the first living navigation pendant in human history. Jia Shidao, who was firmly under the belly of the seraph, shouted hysterically, Too big. Ah, I'm choking." Sun Lang's shocked voice came from the cabin of the seraph. "What are you holding in your mouth?" "I'm talking about the wind. The wind is too strong. Niefeng is here. I have no idea what you're talking about." At this moment, the seraph was flying horizontally. As the most powerful combat weapon in the Lihua nation, it had many forms. At this moment, it was flying at high speed, and its aerodynamic layout was not far from the fighter jets on Earth. Although the conservative Lihua priests had never learned aerodynamics, the principles of the world were objective. The creation of the seraph was the culmination of years of painstaking efforts of countless wise men in the Lihua order. After several generations of improvements, it was an extremely rare and limited edition, and had reached the pinnacle in certain fields. Now the seraph was flying in the sky, and Jia Shidao was tied to the belly of the plane and screaming. His hands and feet were firmly fixed. Sun Lang had hung his brother on the hangar of the super-heavy aerial bomb. So Jia Shidao was screaming in surprise. Well, surprise, at least that was what Sun Lang thought. He said leisurely, "Watch the road. It's cold outside, isn't it? Remember to circulate your inner breath and hold your yuan gong. This is good for your cultivation. Hey, speaking of which, Xiao Longnu's frost jade bed can speed up the cultivation of inner strength. Is the principle similar to this? If that's the case, then we can get some high-speed aircrafts from Lihua and hang some of the young elites on the bomb racks to help them cultivate their martial arts. Most likely, they will be able to advance by leaps and bounds. Isn't that wonderful?" Jia Shidao lowered his head hard to block the wind and spoke more smoothly. He said angrily, "I'm freezing outside, and you're making sarcastic remarks inside." Sun Lang said casually, "Seniority is seniority. Do you want me to let you enjoy the air conditioner inside, while I'm outside enjoying the cold wind? What kind of logic is that?" Jia Shidao complained, "Why not? Brothers should respect each other. Brothers should give in to each other. The elder brother should take care of the younger brother. This is brotherly love. Besides, I've seen the inner cabin of the Lihua device before. It's not too big or too small. It's okay for us to squeeze a little." In the next moment, Jia Shidao felt the world spinning. The seraph, which was flying smoothly, suddenly did a big roll maneuver and then a bell-like maneuver. Its movements were clean and graceful. If it was on Earth, even 50 uncle philosophies would be able to take it down. Jia Shidao, who was tied up outside, felt a chill in his stomach. He knew he was being taught a lesson by his brother again. He yelled, "Why? What did I say wrong again? Isn't it just a squeeze? Squeeze your ass, mother of asterisk her. But this is a good suggestion. Next time I'll teach Inluo to fly the seraph. I'll squeeze with her. With our relationship, it's okay to squeeze a little." Amid Jia Shidao's screams, the seraph swept across the dark sky and rushed toward the southeast. After flying for a long time, a little light appeared on the horizon. Dawn was coming. A huge black shadow whizzed down from the sky and transformed in midair. With a roaring mechanical sound, the transformed steel giant crashed to the ground. The surrounding rocks were crushed and floated in the air, dissipating in all directions. A figure fell off the steel giant and staggered a few steps forward as if he was having a seizure. The body opened. Sun Lang appeared like a ghost and waved his hand. A hot current blew on Jia Shidao's body, making him shiver suddenly and let out a comfortable sigh. His slightly stiff limbs quickly warmed up. The strong internal strength merged into his body, making the internal chi that had been struggling to resist the cold current wind blade run faster. The genuine chi flowing in his bones seemed to be strengthened a little. Was it really effective? The advancement this time was almost equivalent to several months of bitter seclusion. Such rapid progress was enough to make any martial artist happy. There was nothing more delightful than this. He was surprised and happy. Looking at his hands, he couldn't help but smile. But he was only happy for a few seconds. Sun Lang's sinister laughter sounded behind him. "As long as you like it, let's practice more. Your martial arts are too weak. I haven't been able to supervise you in the past 2 years, so I have to make up for it." Jia Shidao's smile froze on his face. Before he could say anything, Sun Lang said, "Look around. I roughly calculated the distance. We should not be far from Summer State now." Although Jia Shidao was responsible for the live navigation pendant, he had been focused on filling the air along the way. But it was understandable. Even a warrior with a strong foundation and a fearless body would be shocked if he didn't pee all the way on a subsonic fighter. How could he have the time to pay attention to the direction? At this time, he calmed down and focused his eyes to look around. He observed the rivers and mountains around him. A detailed topographic map of the Tang and Summer states of the Empire appeared in his mind. Originally, the Empire's map drawing method was extremely simple and crude. Without advanced observation equipment, it was impossible to accurately measure distances and take aerial photographs. Therefore, the maps drawn were very inaccurate and sometimes lacked recognition. Fortunately, Sun Lang came and proposed the concept of scale and contour lines. With this concept, which was extremely simple but had great application, the imperial court began to promote the mapping of maps again. What Jia Shidao remembered in his mind was the new map he had drawn. Otherwise, it would be impossible for him to determine his location through simple observation and memorization of the map when he was in the dark. At this time, the sky was already bright. With this faint light, he observed the direction of the mountains and rivers. He seemed to have made a judgment. Then he looked up at the sky, pinched his fingers, and slowly calculated the position. After double-checking, he said in a certain tone, "This should be near Tang State and Hui County. After 100 miles to the west, we will enter Summer State. After reaching Summer State, brother, fly slower. When we find Xuanwu River, go east along the river. After passing Qing's Supreme Emperor Peak, we will soon reach Jinling." Sun Lang was silent for a moment and said lightly, "Rest for a while and get ready to go." Jia Shidao looked at Sun Lang, and suddenly a very inappropriate word flashed in his mind. Timid when one is close to home. Did brother have hesitation and fear his heart? Yes, his feelings about the Jia mansion must be very complicated. After all, so many things had happened. Who would be able to let go so easily? He sighed in his heart and then whispered, "Brother, what are you going to do when you go back?" Sun Lang said coldly, "First, go to my grave and uncover a life achievement." Hearing this, Jia Shidao was stunned at first and then found it funny. No matter what, it was very interesting to be able to come to his grave alive. But that grave, should it continue to exist? According to common sense, since his brother was not dead, that grave should not be left. After all, he was not dead, so how could he leave such a bad thing? But no one knew that his brother was actually not his brother. That grave, that Tao tablet, and the name engraved on it were the last things that someone left in this world. Thinking of his cousin who had really died 8 years ago, Josh Dao could not help but sigh in his heart. He now knew what the so-called fate plays tricks on people meant. He thought for a moment and said calmly, "Brother said that this time we're just here to check out the situation, so we don't have to show up in a big way. And actually, there's no need to go to Rongwa Mansion." Sun Lang looked at him. Jia Dao met his gaze and continued, "If the old lady is really sick, then this news can't be hidden from my father. He will know sooner or later, so let's go see my father first. We can also learn about the old lady's illness from my father. Brother, you don't have to go back directly." Sun Lang nodded slightly at first, then realized and said with a glare, "I am going to see your father. Who wants to go to Rongwa Mansion? I don't know the way." Jia Dao nodded and whispered, "Actually, it's okay to see the old lady from afar." He looked at Sun Lang's glare and hurriedly added, "It's just a glance to get to know him, to avoid not recognizing him in the future. I'll take elder brother to Rongwa Manor and quietly walk around, without alerting anyone." Sun Lang grabbed him by the collar expressionlessly and put him on the bomb rack again. "We'll talk when we get there." That you're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.